Archaeologists opened China's first female general's tomb. What they found inside shocked the world. A powerful female general who lived 3,000 years ago was buried alongside mysterious skeletons that sent chills down archaeologists' spines when they opened her tomb. A royal mummy, more than 2,200 years old, bears strange tattoos and evidence of a ritual that has never been fully explained. An ancient grave in Europe was constructed for the sole purpose of preventing the dead from rising from the grave, reflecting a centuries-long fear of terrifying undead creatures. A 2,700-year-old shipwreck still hides secrets from a civilization that once dominated ancient trade routes beneath the waters of the Mediterranean Sea. Are these discoveries merely archaeological artifacts, or are they telling stories that history has yet to fully unravel? Hello, and welcome back to Ancient History. My friends, although modern science has advanced tremendously, with technologies capable of seeing deep beneath the earth, scanning through mummies, and reconstructing the past from ancient bones, countless mysteries still leave researchers struggling to find answers. Every archaeological excavation is more than a search for artifacts. It is a doorway that takes us back in time, allowing us to uncover strange stories, astonishing customs, and truths that may change the way we understand history. In today's video, we will explore some of the most mysterious and terrifying archaeological discoveries ever found around the world. From tombs hiding chilling secrets and skeletal remains with unusual characteristics to artifacts that have sparked decades of scientific debate, these extraordinary finds are waiting to be uncovered and understood. So let's begin our journey right now. The tomb of the most powerful female general of the Shang dynasty and a 3,000-year-old secret that shocked Chinese history. Did you know that about 3,000 years ago, when most women in feudal Chinese society were recognized only as wives and mothers standing behind men, there was one woman who shattered every limitation of her era? She not only stepped onto the battlefield and commanded thousands of soldiers, but also became one of the most powerful figures of the Shang dynasty. Even more astonishing, after lying hidden beneath the earth for millennia, her story was gradually revealed through a groundbreaking archaeological discovery in China. And what archaeologists found inside her tomb left many people stunned. Just imagine this: in an age when women's voices carried little influence, how could a woman rise to become a military commander, participate in state affairs, and earn the special trust and respect of the king? It seems almost unbelievable, doesn't it? Yet this remarkable woman achieved exactly that. Her name was Fu Hao, a historical figure widely regarded as the first verified female general in Chinese history whose existence was recorded in written texts. Fu Hao lived during the reign of King Wu Ding, the 22nd ruler of the Shang dynasty, who ruled from approximately 1250 to 1192 BC. According to Chinese historical records, King Wu Ding married many women from neighboring tribes in order to strengthen alliances and political relationships. Ancient documents indicate that he had as many as 60 wives, and Fu Hao was one of them. However, she was far from an ordinary consort. Thanks to her exceptional talent and abilities, she quickly became one of the most influential figures in the royal court. Although many details of Fu Hao's life remain a mystery to modern researchers, inscriptions carved onto ancient animal bones have revealed valuable information about her accomplishments. These records show that Fu Hao personally commanded Shang armies in numerous major military campaigns and achieved remarkable victories. She defeated the Qiangfang, the most powerful rival tribe of the time. Not stopping there, she also led military expeditions against the Tufang, Bafang, and Dongyi peoples. In particular, during a campaign against the Bafang, Fu Hao executed an exceptionally clever military strategy. She positioned troops in ambush and waited for King Wu Ding's forces to drive the enemy into a prearranged location. Once the opposing army fell into the trap, the hidden forces launched their attack and secured a decisive victory. Many historians believe this may be the earliest recorded ambush battle in Chinese history. At this point, many people may wonder how a woman who lived more than 3 millennia ago could earn the absolute respect and obedience of an entire army. The answer is actually quite straightforward. Fu Hao's influence extended far beyond the battlefield. She also presided over many of the court's most important religious ceremonies. From ancestral worship and offerings to the gods to rituals connected with heaven and earth, Fu Hao held a uniquely significant position. This demonstrates that she possessed not only military authority but also immense political and religious influence. Because of her extraordinary status, when Fu Hao died before King Wu Ding, she was buried in a magnificent tomb in what is now Anyang, Henan Province, China. However, her final resting place remained undiscovered until 1976, when archaeologists finally uncovered it. The discovery is considered one of the most important archaeological finds related to the Shang dynasty because the tomb had remained almost completely intact for thousands of years. As researchers entered the burial chamber, they were repeatedly astonished by the enormous quantity of artifacts buried alongside her. Archaeologists uncovered more than 400 bronze objects, including weapons, bells, and exquisitely crafted ritual vessels. In addition, they found 755 jade artifacts, 564 objects made from animal bone, stone, and other materials, as well as numerous additional treasures. Thousands of cowrie shells, the common form of currency during the Shang dynasty, were also discovered within the tomb complex. Together, these items reflected the immense wealth and exceptional status of this remarkable woman. Yet the most shocking discovery was not the priceless treasures. What truly stunned archaeologists were the remains of 16 individuals buried deep within the tomb complex, including children. According to experts, these individuals were likely slaves or servants who had been forced to die and be buried alongside Fu Hao, based on the belief that they would continue serving her in the afterlife. This discovery sparked considerable debate because it revealed a deeply cruel practice that existed in ancient society. On one hand, Fu Hao is celebrated as one of the greatest female military leaders in Chinese history. On the other hand, the evidence found in her tomb forces later generations to reflect on the terrible price that many innocent people may have paid as part of the burial customs of that era. Fortunately, Fu Hao's tomb remained largely untouched when it was discovered in 1976. Had the tomb been looted, or had the inscribed oracle bones not survived, history might have permanently forgotten one of the most powerful and extraordinary women of ancient China. As you can see, the secrets buried deep beneath the earth for thousands of years often become the keys that help us better understand the people who once changed the course of history. Fascinating, isn't it? The white skeletons, smiling in the middle of the desert. Have you ever heard of an ancient cemetery hidden in the heart of a barren desert, where over 1,000-year-old human remains still retain an air of mystery, some even appearing to smile at those who come to see them? This is the Chowchilla Cemetery, located southeast of the city of Nazca, Peru, a destination that is impossible to overlook for anyone fascinated by archaeology and the hidden stories of history. Chowchilla is much more than a simple burial ground. It stands as a living testament to the legendary Nazca civilization, which flourished from the 1st century AD to the 9th century AD. Here, hundreds of white skeletons are positioned inside specially designed burial pits in a seated posture, with their backs supported, creating a vivid picture of the unique burial customs practiced by the ancient Nazca people. What is truly astonishing is that despite the harsh, hot, and extremely dry desert climate, these remains have survived remarkably well. Some have not only retained their skeletal structure, but have even preserved strands of soft human hair, something that archaeologists have yet to fully explain. Did you know that archaeologists first discovered this cemetery in the 1920s, opening a doorway into the study of a civilization that had long been forgotten and whose decline remains shrouded in mystery? Although the Nazca civilization vanished centuries ago, the artifacts and human remains at Chowchilla continue to tell their story in a quiet yet powerful way. According to researchers, these exceptionally preserved remains may have belonged to tribal leaders or individuals of high social status. This theory is supported by the discovery of valuable jewelry and precious artifacts made of gold, silver, and gemstones buried alongside them, evidence of the wealth and influence they once possessed. Perhaps the most fascinating feature of these skeletons is their appearance. Many of them have jawbones that remain open, giving the impression that they are wearing a wide grin. It is an image that is both eerie and captivating. Researchers believe that the ancient Nazca people may have performed special procedures during the burial process to create this effect, causing the skeletons to appear as though they have been smiling through the centuries, a mysterious message left behind for future generations. Can you imagine it? Beneath the scorching desert sun, These gleaming white skeletons remain in place like immortal witnesses to history, inviting curious visitors and explorers to learn about and reflect upon a civilization that once thrived in this region. Every step you take through Chowchilla Cemetery becomes a journey through time, where the past and present intersect. It is a place that sparks wonder, curiosity, and a deep sense of fascination about the many secrets that still remain hidden beneath the sands of history. The skeleton of a daughter, embracing her mother in a 1,800-year-old Roman grave. The story began in 2004 when archaeologists excavated an ancient cemetery in the Roman city of Ovalava, located in what is now the city of Wels in Upper Austria, Austria. During the excavation, they uncovered a remarkable grave containing 3 skeletons, 2 adults and a horse buried together. Alongside them were 2 gold pendants shaped like a wheel and a crescent moon, artifacts suggesting that the individuals buried there were far from ordinary. However, what drew the most attention to this grave was the position of the 2 human skeletons. One skeleton was found embracing the other, with its right arm placed around the other's shoulder, as if protecting and comforting a loved one. That detail alone is enough to make us feel the special bond that once existed between these 2 individuals. Based on the burial depth and the west-to-east orientation of the grave, researchers initially believed it dated to the 6th or 7th century and may have been the final resting place of a medieval married couple. However, as modern scientific technology advanced, a new research team decided to re-examine all the evidence. Using radiocarbon dating, ancient DNA analysis, and anatomical examinations of the skeletal remains, scientists uncovered a surprising truth. The 2 individuals buried in the grave did not live during the Middle Ages, as previously believed. Instead, they lived around AD 200, when the region was still under the rule of the Roman Empire, approximately 1,800 years ago. An even greater surprise followed. Both skeletons belonged to women. One died between the ages of 20 and 25, while the other was between 40 and 60 years old. DNA analysis confirmed that they shared a first-degree biological relationship, meaning they were either sisters or a mother and daughter. At that point, the most important question became, who were they really? After comparing their ages, genetic results, and numerous other factors, the research team led by Professor Sylvia Kirchengast of the University of Vienna concluded that the most likely explanation was that they were a mother and daughter. According to Professor Kirchengast, such a large age gap between 2 sisters would have been highly unusual in that historical period. Therefore, the theory that the daughter was embracing her mother during their final moments together became the most convincing explanation. The artifacts found in the grave also revealed additional clues. The presence of the horse and the gold jewelry suggests that the 2 women held relatively high social status. However, they were most likely not members of the Roman aristocracy. Lead researcher Dominic Hagman proposed that they may have been Celts, members of a civilization that continued to exist under Roman rule. The Celts were known for the custom of burying horses alongside their owners after death, and several features of the skeletons indicate that both women may have been frequent horseback riders during their lives. Even independent experts were impressed by the discovery. Graduate researcher Katie Nortz of Princeton University noted that although the possibility that the 2 women were sisters cannot be completely ruled out, their protective embrace and significant age difference make a mother-daughter relationship far more convincing. After resting undisturbed beneath the earth for nearly 1,800 years, this grave tells more than just the story of 2 women from the Roman era. It also reminds us of something deeply meaningful. No matter how much time passes, the bond of family and the connection between a mother and her child can endure across thousands of years of history, reaching the hearts of people living today. Don't you think that is both deeply moving and truly sacred? The skeleton of a woman buried in a fetal position in a 4,000-year-old grave. Imagine this. One day, archaeologists dig deep beneath the earth and uncover a human skeleton curled tightly into itself, as if embracing its own body, preserved for thousands of years. What would be the first thing that comes to your mind? An ancient burial ritual? An unusual death? Or a secret that history deliberately tried to bury? If you do not yet have your own answer to those questions, then join me on a journey to the Uckermark district in Brandenburg, Germany, where archaeologists discovered the remains of a woman in a position that immediately captured everyone's attention, and perhaps helped answer some of those very questions. This woman was not buried lying flat on her back, as we commonly see in most graves. Instead, she was laid on her right side, with her arms and legs tightly drawn toward her chest. Her body was curled into a fetal position, much like an unborn child in the womb, while her face was turned toward the north. As soon as the skeleton was excavated, researchers realized that this was no ordinary grave. The unusual posture immediately reminded archaeologists of an ancient burial custom that was practiced in parts of Europe thousands of years ago. According to experts, this type of flexed burial is commonly associated with the Neolithic period, which lasted from roughly 6000 BC to 2000 BC, when human societies gradually transitioned from hunting and gathering to farming and permanent settlement. Based on the initial evidence, the archaeological team believes the woman may have been buried around 2500 BC. If so, she would have rested beneath the earth for more than 4,000 years. What makes the discovery even more intriguing is that scientists have not yet been able to determine her exact age at death or establish a precise date for the burial. According to Christoph Krauskopf of the Brandenburg State Heritage Preservation Office, the find could provide important clues that help explain how ancient cultures spread, interacted, and influenced one another throughout human history. From a single skeleton, researchers may be able to trace the movements and connections of communities that disappeared long ago. Unfortunately, the deeper they investigate, the more mysteries seem to emerge. Do you know what has puzzled archaeologists the most? Inside the grave, there were absolutely no grave goods, no jewelry, no tools, no ritual objects. In other words, there are almost no clues that could help identify who this woman was, what social status she held, or what caused her death. Adding to the mystery, the location of the grave is highly unusual. Rather than being buried within an ancient cemetery, the woman was found in a pit near what appears to have been a settlement area. This has led archaeologists to propose new theories about the community in which she lived and the burial customs practiced during that era. To answer the many remaining questions, scientists are continuing a series of detailed examinations. Bone samples will be analyzed in laboratories to establish a more accurate date for the burial. Anthropologists will study evidence of disease, diet, and possible causes of death. At the same time, DNA testing may reveal whether the woman was native to the Uckermark region or had migrated there from a distant land. For now, however, her identity remains a mystery. But as you know, sometimes the most fascinating discoveries are the ones that have not yet been fully explained. After all, every ancient skeleton is more than just the remains of a person who once lived. It is also a message sent from the distant past. And who knows? When future research results are finally released, perhaps the woman who has lain curled beneath the earth for more than 4,000 years will tell us a story that history has kept hidden for millennia. That is certainly possible because history has always been like that. Mysterious, captivating, and often difficult to explain, isn't it? 8 real human teeth found inside a 300-year-old statue of Jesus leave scientists baffled. Can you believe that inside an ancient religious statue that has stood for hundreds of years, there could be a hidden secret so puzzling that it continues to challenge scientists today? It may sound unbelievable, but that is exactly what happened in Mexico, where a strange discovery inside a statue of Jesus left researchers astonished. What makes this finding so remarkable is that the secret was not related to the statue's age or the materials used to create it. Instead, it was hidden inside its mouth. The story began when a team of specialists took part in a restoration project involving historic religious statues at a church in the town of San Bartolo Cuautlalpan, Mexico. While restoring a statue of Jesus that had been crafted in the 18th century, they noticed an unusual detail that had gone almost completely unnoticed for centuries. During a close examination of the statue's head, experts were shocked to discover that the upper jaw contained 8 genuine human teeth. Just imagine for a moment, if you were restoring an ancient statue and suddenly found real human teeth inside it, complete with intact roots, wouldn't it send a chill down your spine? Most likely it would. The restoration experts were equally stunned because this is not something normally found in historic religious sculptures. According to the research team, the teeth have remained in remarkably good condition despite being nearly 300 years old. Yet what puzzled everyone even more was the fact that their true origin remains a complete mystery. No surviving documents explain why the artist who created the statue chose to use real human teeth instead of more conventional materials. Restoration artist Fanny Unical explained that, according to certain ancient religious traditions, some worshippers occasionally donated parts of their own bodies as an expression of faith and devotion. However, in most cases, artisans typically used wood, bone, or artificial materials to create teeth for religious statues. For that reason, the discovery of real human teeth inside a statue of Jesus is considered extremely rare. To this day, scientists have not been able to determine whether the 8 teeth came from a single individual or from multiple people. One theory suggests that they may have been a devotional offering from a believer to Jesus, intended as a gesture of gratitude or deep reverence. However, this remains nothing more than speculation. After all, how were the teeth able to survive for so long without suffering severe deterioration? Who did they originally belong to? And why were they placed inside this sacred statue in the first place? Even today, those questions remain unanswered. Scientists continue to investigate, hoping that one day they will be able to identify the owner of these mysterious teeth and finally uncover the truth behind the strange story that has remained hidden for nearly 300 years inside a statue of Jesus in Mexico. The most unusual, 5,000-year-old skeleton in China suffered from a rare disorder that challenges scientists. At an ancient cemetery near the Yellow River in east-central China, archaeologists uncovered a remarkable skeleton that has kept researchers studying it for years. What makes the discovery even more extraordinary is that the skeleton belonged to a young man who lived with an extremely rare medical condition approximately 5,000 years ago. The remains were discovered during excavations at a Neolithic cemetery, used by people who lived between 3,300 and 2,900 BC. At first glance, the grave appeared no different from the others surrounding it. However, as archaeologists examined the burial more closely, they quickly noticed something unusual. Most of the individuals in the cemetery had been buried with their hands resting on their abdomen. This skeleton, however, was positioned differently, with both hands placed behind the back. That was not the only difference. The skeleton was also significantly smaller than the others buried in the same cemetery. Just imagine standing among dozens of ancient skeletons and noticing a single set of remains that looked noticeably different from all the rest. Naturally, anyone would want to know what had happened to that individual. A detailed analysis revealed that the young man's arm and leg bones were shorter than normal and showed signs of being weaker than those of the other individuals. This led researchers to hypothesize that he may have suffered from dwarfism, a condition that disrupts normal bone development and results in a height significantly below average. However, as the investigation continued, experts realized that this case was even rarer than they had initially imagined. Most cases of dwarfism identified in archaeological remains involve achondroplasia, a disorder that causes shortened limbs while the head and torso remain relatively normal in size. In this particular skeleton, however, not only were the arms and legs smaller than usual, but the head and torso were also unusually small. Based on the development of the teeth, scientists determined that the remains belonged to a young adult. After compiling all available evidence, researchers concluded that the individual most likely suffered from a form of proportional dwarfism, an exceptionally rare condition not only in archaeology but also among modern populations. According to a report published in the International Journal of Paleopathology on December 13th of last year, dwarfism currently occurs at a rate of approximately 3.22 cases per 10,000 births. Cases identified in archaeological remains are far rarer. To date, researchers have documented fewer than 40 such cases worldwide. The research team believes the young man's condition may have been linked to impaired pituitary gland or thyroid gland function during childhood. These endocrine glands play critical roles in regulating the body's hormones. When they do not function properly, they can slow bone growth and affect intelligence, the heart, lungs, and many other organs. What especially caught scientists' attention was the fact that despite living with such a serious medical condition, the young man survived into adulthood. This suggests that he likely received care and support from the people around him. In other words, communities living 5,000 years ago may not have abandoned vulnerable individuals. 2,200-year-old royal mummies, bodies covered in tattoos and evidence of ancient cannabis rituals. What if I told you that more than 2,200 years ago, there were people who covered their arms with tattoos? Tattoos so intricate and well-preserved that they can still be clearly seen today, and that evidence suggests cannabis may have played a role in their funeral rituals? It sounds more like a story from the modern world than from ancient history, doesn't it? Yet remarkably, all of these details were discovered on the bodies of two mummies that lay deep within permafrost for more than 2 millennia. And when modern technology finally allowed scientists to look inside these ancient remains, a wealth of secrets hidden for thousands of years began to emerge. The story began in 1949, when 2 ancient mummies were brought to the famous Hermitage Museum in St. Petersburg, Russia. Earlier, Soviet archaeologists had excavated the remains in the Altai Mountains, a region known for its extremely harsh frozen conditions. It was this permafrost that inadvertently became a natural preservation chamber, keeping the bodies in an astonishing state of preservation for more than 2,200 years. According to researchers, the 2 individuals were most likely a married couple belonging to the Caucasian royal elite of the ancient Pazyryk culture. Although they are not the oldest mummies ever discovered, they possess a remarkable feature rarely found anywhere else in the world: burial shrouds dating back to the 5th century BC, considered the oldest known funerary cloths in archaeological history. For many decades, the cause of death of these 2 individuals remained a mystery. Scientists were unwilling to risk damaging the precious remains through invasive examination methods. As a result, many questions about their lives remained unanswered. It was not until modern X-ray imaging and CT scanning technologies became available that researchers were finally able to examine the interior structures of the bodies without causing any harm. Their goals were to determine the cause of death, reconstruct the individual's appearances during life, and better understand the mummification techniques used by this ancient civilization. What the scans revealed astonished the archaeological community. Think about it for a moment. What would be the most surprising thing you could find on the body of a 2,200-year-old mummy? The answer was tattoos that had survived in remarkable condition. On the man's shoulder appeared the image of a predatory animal believed to be a tiger, along with the figure of a horse. His right arm displayed various predatory animals with striped tails intertwined with different species of birds. Even below his knee, a detailed group of hoofed animals had been tattooed with extraordinary precision. The woman possessed equally impressive tattoos. Although her shoulders showed no tattooing, her arms were almost completely covered with ancient artwork. The most striking image depicts a bird of prey swooping down to attack a deer. On the back of her hand was the image of a rooster. In addition, 2 tigers and a snow leopard appeared in vivid hunting poses. What made these tattoos especially intriguing was that most of them depicted real animals. This surprised researchers because the Pazyryk people were widely known for tattooing mythical creatures onto their bodies. As a result, the tattoos found on these 2 mummies are considered highly unusual. But the mysteries did not end there. During their investigation of the burial site, researchers also discovered evidence indicating that cannabis had been burned inside the tomb. This finding led to the hypothesis that the Pazyryk people may have used cannabis as part of a funeral ritual intended to help guide the deceased into the afterlife. It may sound difficult to believe, but the theory is supported by clear archaeological evidence. 400-year-old zombie grave reveals the terrifying truth behind Europe's obsession with the undead. What would you think if archaeologists opened an ancient grave and discovered that the deceased had not been buried in the usual way, but instead had been placed face down in the ground, with a knife lying beside the body as if someone had been trying to prevent the person from returning from the dead? It sounds like a scene from a zombie horror movie, doesn't it? But the remarkable thing is that this is not fiction. It actually happened in history. In 2014, archaeologists in Switzerland uncovered a strange ancient grave that left researchers deeply puzzled. At first glance, it appeared to be an ordinary burial containing the remains of a man who had died approximately 400 years ago. However, the more closely experts examined the grave, the more they realized that the burial was anything but ordinary. The man had been laid to rest in a burial position, but instead of facing upward as was customary in most traditional funeral practices, his body had been buried face down. And that was not all. A knife had been carefully placed beside one of his arms. Next to the body was a purse filled with coins dating from approximately AD 1630 to 1650. All of these details convinced researchers that this was no ordinary grave. After years of analysis and investigation, a scientific team led by Dr. Amelie Alterauge, a forensic anthropologist at the University of Bern in Switzerland, reached a startling conclusion. According to findings published in the scientific journal PLOS I, the grave was most likely constructed according to a special burial ritual reserved for individuals whom the local community believed might become undead after death. Sounds unbelievable, doesn't it? But if we place ourselves in the position of people living in Europe several centuries ago, it becomes easier to understand why they were so afraid. To search for a more definitive explanation, Dr. Alterauge and her colleague Sandra Losch expanded their study to include nearly 100 other ancient graves displaying similar characteristics. These burials span roughly 900 years of history and share one striking feature: the deceased were buried face down. The research revealed that these graves serve the same purpose as many other unusual burial practices discovered throughout Europe. In some cases, bodies were pinned down beneath massive stones. Elsewhere, corpses were deliberately mutilated before burial. All of these practices appear to have stemmed from the same fear, preventing the dead from returning to torment the living as vampires or undead creatures. What makes the story even more fascinating is that the origins of this belief may be linked to one of the most devastating disasters in human history. According to researchers, anti-undead burial customs began to appear around AD 1347, precisely when the Black Death started spreading across Europe. Just imagine the situation at the time. Millions of people died within a relatively short period. Corpses accumulated so rapidly that communities could not bury them quickly enough. Many bodies remained exposed for days before finally being laid to rest. As decomposition progressed, the bodies underwent disturbing changes. The skin shrank, making hair and fingernails appear longer. Gases accumulated inside the corpse, producing strange sounds. In some cases, the body even swelled and ruptured during the decomposition process. Today, we understand that these are completely normal biological phenomena. But to people living during the Middle Ages, what they witnessed looked very much like the dead were slowly coming back to life. From these terrifying observations emerged the legends of zombies, vampires, and other creatures said to rise from their graves. As a result, whenever someone was suspected of becoming one of the undead after death, communities took extraordinary measures to prevent it. 200-year-old petrified tumor, weighing more than 6.6 pounds, found inside the body of a British woman. While excavating a centuries-old cemetery, archaeologists unexpectedly discovered the skeleton of a woman. At first glance, everything appeared completely ordinary. However, located in the pelvic region of the skeleton was a strange, unusually large round object. Initially, some researchers even believed it might have been a skull that had somehow been misplaced during burial. But the more they investigated, the more astonishing the truth became. This was not a skull, nor was it an ancient grave artifact. It was actually a completely calcified uterus, weighing more than 6.6 pounds, and is considered the largest case ever discovered in the history of archaeology. The story began in 2011 at the ancient cemetery of St. Michael's Lytton in the city of Chichester, England. Before a residential construction project could begin, scientists from the University of London conducted an archaeological excavation of the site. No one expected that the dig would lead to one of the strangest medical archaeological discoveries ever recorded. At this cemetery, which had been used from the late Middle Ages until the 19th century, researchers uncovered nearly 2,000 graves featuring a variety of burial practices. Some individuals had been wrapped in shrouds, others buried in wooden coffins, and some were even interred in brick-lined graves. Yet among the thousands of skeletons excavated, the remains of a woman in her 50s quickly attracted everyone's attention. The reason was the large mass resting directly above her pelvic bones. After careful analysis, experts determined that it was a calcified uterus, sometimes referred to as a petrified uterus, dating back at least 200 years. Just imagine what it would be like to carry a mass weighing more than 6.6 pounds inside your body for years. According to Carolyn Rando, a forensic anthropologist at the University of London, this is one of the largest tumors ever identified in archaeological research. She stated that she had never encountered anything similar before. Even colleagues with many years of experience in archaeology and ancient medicine were astonished by the discovery. Analysis revealed that the woman was over 50 years old when she died. She had lost all of her teeth and showed signs of osteoporosis. Based on the dating of the grave, experts believe she lived sometime between the 17th and 19th centuries. Interestingly, the calcified uterus most likely began as benign uterine fibroids. This condition is relatively common among women of reproductive age and can occur in approximately 40% of women. Normally, these fibroids remain as soft tissue. However, when they grow too large and lose their blood supply, they can gradually calcify and become as hard as stone over time. According to Carolyn Rando, the woman likely endured significant challenges in her daily life. A massive growth of this size would undoubtedly have placed pressure on her internal organs. Rando suggested that walking, resting, and even using the bathroom would have been difficult. Carrying the tumor may have felt much like constantly carrying a fully developed fetus inside her body. Yet there is one particularly surprising aspect of the case. Scientists believe the tumor may have developed over a very long period of time, but the woman still lived to a relatively advanced age compared to many people of her era. This suggests that although the tumor was enormous, it may not have posed a life-threatening danger for most of her life. 2,700-year-old ship reveals the secrets of the Phoenician civilization beneath the Mediterranean Sea. In the vast waters of the Mediterranean Sea, where thousands of ships have traveled over the course of many millennia, an ancient vessel lay silently on the seafloor for nearly 2,700 years. No one knew where it was. No one knew exactly what had happened to the crew on board. Then one day, after being hidden beneath sand in deep blue waters for dozens of centuries, its secret was finally brought back into the light. What excited archaeologists most was the possibility that this vessel could be the oldest shipwreck ever discovered in the Mediterranean region. This remarkable discovery was announced on August 25th by Owen Bonisi, Malta's Minister for Culture. The wreck was found off the coast of Gozo, Malta's second-largest island, approximately 1 mile from shore. What makes the discovery even more astonishing is that the ship rests at a depth of about 394 feet below the surface of the sea, a place where sunlight can barely reach. Just think about it. For nearly 27 centuries, this ship remained motionless on the seafloor, silently witnessing the passage of human history. When it sank beneath the waves, many of the world's most famous empires had not yet come into existence, and yet its remains have survived to the present day. According to researcher Timothy Gambin of the University of Malta, divers surveying the wreck site discovered numerous valuable artifacts scattered around the area. Among them were approximately 50 ancient amphorae and 20 grinding stones. These artifacts are considered important clues that may help scientists reconstruct the ship's final voyage. What is particularly intriguing is that these are only the objects visible on the surface. Experts believe that beneath the layers of sand on the seabed, many more artifacts and perhaps even intact sections of the ship itself remain buried and await excavation. For that reason, research and exploration at the site are still ongoing. Based on the location of the discovery, archaeologists have proposed that the vessel may have been traveling between Sicily and Malta when it met its fate. However, the true cause of the shipwreck remains a mystery. Was it a violent storm, a maritime accident, or some other disaster at sea that doomed the ship and its crew? For now, these remain unanswered questions. What makes the discovery even more significant is the ship's likely origin. Experts believe the vessel belonged to the Phoenician civilization, one of the most famous maritime civilizations of the ancient world. Many people may not realize that the Phoenicians were widely regarded as masters of the sea. Their civilization flourished along the coastal regions of what are now Lebanon, Syria, and northern Israel. From approximately 1550 BC to 300 BC, they built an extensive trading network that stretched across the Mediterranean. At a time when many other civilizations were primarily focused on land-based activities, the Phoenicians were sailing across vast distances to exchange goods with distant lands. Their commercial activities helped connect ancient cultures and establish some of the earliest trade routes in human history. One of their most common vessels was the galley, a large ship powered by human rowers. These ships traveled throughout the Mediterranean, transporting goods, raw materials, and handcrafted products between ancient cities. To uncover more of the secrets hidden beneath the sea, several international research organizations have joined the project. In addition to the University of Malta, The effort also includes the participation of the French National Center for Scientific Research and Texas A&M University. This international collaboration highlights the extraordinary importance of the discovery to the global archaeological community. As you can see, sometimes a single shipwreck resting deep beneath the ocean can tell an entire chapter of history that has been forgotten for thousands of years. And who knows, when the last layers of sand are finally removed, this 2,700-year-old vessel may reveal even more secrets about the lives, trade activities, and daring voyages of the ancient Phoenicians. Perhaps somewhere beneath the Mediterranean Sea, many more stories like this are still waiting to be discovered. The chilling mystery of the three-fingered mummies in Peru. Alien remains or a species far more advanced than humanity. Do you believe that at some point in Earth's history, there may have existed a species that looked human yet was not entirely human? A being with an unnaturally elongated skull, hands with only 3 fingers, and a body structure so bizarre that even modern scientists have argued about it for years. And what makes this even more terrifying is that these mummies did not come from legends or science fiction movies. They were discovered in real life, in Peru, the South American country famous for countless unsolved archaeological mysteries. The story began in early 2017, when researchers uncovered a series of strange mummies deep beneath the ground inside an ancient burial site in southern Peru. From the very moment they were brought into the light, these remains shocked the entire world, not because they were preserved in an unnervingly perfect condition, but because their appearance was completely unlike that of ordinary humans. Among them was the most famous mummy of all, named Maria, later identified as a woman who had lived around the 5th century BC. Do you know why this mummy was considered the most extraordinary? Because while normal humans like us have 5 fingers and 5 toes, Maria's hands and feet each had only 3 fingers and 3 toes, and they were unusually long. That detail alone was enough to send chills down anyone's spine. But that was not the only shocking discovery. Inside the same tomb, researchers also found the mummy of a baby girl around 9 months old, named Vavita. In addition, Peru allowed Russian experts to examine 4 other male mummies standing only about 28 inches tall, with estimated ages ranging from 4,000 to as much as 6,500 years old. Just hearing that is enough to make it clear that this story is far from ordinary, isn't it? What made the case even more mysterious was that the initial examinations suggested these mummies genuinely possessed human characteristics. They had heads, eyes, mouths, arms, and legs, just like us. Analyses of muscle tissue, chemical structure, and DNA produced astonishing results. Maria and the other mummies possessed 23 pairs of chromosomes, exactly like modern humans today. Even their amino acid sequences showed almost no differences. Yet some aspects of their skeletal structure were drastically different from ours. For example, their skulls extended abnormally far backward, resembling the ancient depictions of extraterrestrials often seen in movies. Their lower jawbones appeared almost fused to the skull, making movement impossible in the same way humans normally can. And most striking of all, every one of them had only 3 fingers and 3 toes. From these details, experts argued that this was no ordinary deformity. The bone structure suggested they developed naturally from birth, rather than being altered, amputated, or deformed after death. And that is precisely what led some researchers to propose extremely controversial theories. According to one genetics research group in St. Petersburg, Russia, these mummies might not belong to the human species as we know it. Meanwhile, Professor Konstantin Korotkov of the Russian National Research University made statements that sent shockwaves through the scientific community. He claimed that they look human but are not entirely human. According to him, Maria and Vavita could represent a species that had reached a level of development far beyond modern humanity, perhaps thousands of years ahead of us. And the most disturbing possibility raised was that they could be connected to extraterrestrials or some form of ancient biological robots. Sounds like science fiction, doesn't it? But what makes the story even stranger is that all of this happened near one of the world's most mysterious locations, the Nazca Lines of Peru. This is the site of gigantic drawings stretching across the ground, visible in their full form only from high above the sky. There are animal figures, enormous straight lines extending for miles, and most notably, a giant humanoid figure standing about 131 feet tall with an extremely unusual appearance. From all these details, many people believe the Nazca lines may have been some kind of message to the sky, or perhaps even signs of communication with beings beyond Earth. The strange object hidden inside an Egyptian mummy for thousands of years left the entire archaeological world stunned. What would you think if I told you that inside the body of an ancient Egyptian mummy, a secret was hidden unlike anything ever discovered in the history of archaeology? This secret had nothing to do with gold, precious jewels, or magical curses like most people would imagine. Instead, it was connected to a famous ancient text that once helped shape the entire civilization of Greece. And the terrifying part is that this object remained hidden inside the stomach of a dead man for nearly 2,000 years without anyone ever knowing. Hard to believe, right? But this is a completely real story that archaeologists have only recently uncovered. Yes, this strange story began in Oxyrhynchus, an ancient cemetery located in the town of Al-Banasa in Egypt's Minya province. This site has long been considered one of the country's most important archaeological locations, where thousands of ancient manuscripts and countless mysterious mummies have already been discovered. But during excavations carried out in November and December of 2025, archaeologists uncovered something that left the entire research team speechless. While examining the mummy of a man buried during the period when Egypt was under Roman rule, experts unexpectedly discovered a papyrus scroll hidden inside the abdominal area of the body. At first, that might not sound too unusual, since ancient Egyptians were known to place papyrus documents inside the bodies of the dead. But what shocked everyone was the text written on that scroll. It was not a spell, not a magical ritual, not a prayer for the afterlife. Instead, it was part of the Iliad, the legendary epic written by Homer, one of the greatest poets of ancient Greece. A literary work approximately 2,700 to 2,800 years old, telling the story of the famous Trojan War from Greek mythology, had somehow ended up inside the stomach of an Egyptian mummy. That fact alone was enough to spark intense debate throughout the archaeological world. According to the research team led by the University of Barcelona, the discovered text belonged to Book 2 of the Iliad, the section listing the ships used to attack the city of Troy during the legendary war. What made this discovery even stranger was that the scroll was not buried beside the mummy like a normal funerary object. Instead, it had been deliberately placed directly inside the corpse during the mummification process. In other words, thousands of years ago, someone intentionally inserted this famous literary work into the man's body before he was buried. And this is where the story becomes even more chilling. According to lead archaeologist Esther Ponce Melado, the people performing the burial ritual may have believed that the scroll would protect the deceased in the afterlife. The custom of placing papyrus inside mummies had actually been documented before. However, most papyrus texts found inside the chest or abdomen of mummies usually contained magical writings, spells, or prayers intended to guide the soul of the dead. But this time, it was the Iliad, a Greek literary masterpiece rather than an Egyptian sacred text. That detail has left scientists deeply confused, because until now, this is the first time in the history of archaeology that the Iliad has ever been discovered inside an ancient Egyptian mummy. And no one knows exactly why ancient people believed this text could protect a soul after death. Did they consider the Iliad to be a sacred document? Or was there once an ancient religious belief tied to it that has been lost for thousands of years? What makes the mystery even deeper is that the identity of this mummy remains completely unknown. So far, examinations have only confirmed that the man lived during the period of Roman rule in Egypt from 30 BC after the death of Cleopatra until AD 641 when the Rashidun Caliphate took control of Egypt. Beyond that, everything remains a mystery. The more researchers investigate, the more this story feels like a suspense film rather than a normal archaeological discovery. But it seems that Oxyrhynchus still has no intention of revealing all its secrets. Because in earlier excavations at the very same site, scientists had already discovered more than 10 mummies with golden tongues. Ancient Egyptians believed these golden tongues would allow the dead to communicate with the gods and speak in the afterlife. Just hearing that alone is enough to send chills down your spine, isn't it? So now let's try to connect all these pieces together. An unidentified mummy, a Greek epic hidden inside the stomach of the dead, strange rituals connected to the afterlife, and an ancient Egyptian cemetery that continues producing discoveries far beyond the understanding of modern humans. Could all of this be suggesting one terrifying possibility? That ancient people may have understood far more about death than we do today? Two skeletons embraced for 800 years inside an ancient church in Poland. Inside a centuries-old church in Europe, archaeologists unexpectedly uncovered a mysterious grave. Why do I call it mysterious? Because inside were not one, but two skeletons lying closely together as if they had never wanted to be apart. One was buried according to traditional medieval burial customs, while the other was positioned on its side, embracing the other person as though trying to protect them even after death. Just witnessing that scene alone was enough to leave the entire excavation team speechless. And what makes it even more fascinating is that to this day, the mystery behind these two skeletons remains unsolved. The story begins in the city of Opole, in the country of Poland, Europe. There stands a famous religious structure known as the Cathedral of the Exaltation of the Holy Cross, an ancient church built in the 13th century. During archaeological excavations within the church grounds, experts discovered a double grave believed to be around 800 years old. But the moment the final layer of soil was cleared away, everyone realized this was no ordinary burial. The two skeletons were positioned extremely close together, as though they had never wanted to leave one another's side, even in the afterlife. One of them had been buried according to common medieval Christian traditions, lying flat on the back with both arms resting alongside the body. But the other skeleton was completely different. This individual was lying on one side, with one arm placed beneath the other person's head, creating the impression of someone lovingly holding the person beside them. Archaeologists believe the two were buried at the same time, rather than being placed in the grave during separate periods. And honestly, that posture alone is enough to make anyone feel that there must have been something deeply special between these two people. At first, many believed this could have been a married couple from the Middle Ages. After all, double burials are not uncommon throughout the world. In archaeological history, many couples have been buried side by side as symbols of love and connection beyond death. But then the DNA analysis completely shattered every original theory. Both skeletons belonged to women. Not only that, but they were not biologically related either. This discovery immediately raised countless questions that left researchers puzzled for years. Biological anthropologist Agata Cieślik from Poland's Ludwig Hirschfeld Institute of Immunology and Experimental Therapy stated that finding such an unusual burial arrangement in a sacred setting drew significant attention from scientists. According to her, the way the two women were positioned beside each other strongly suggests they shared an extraordinarily special bond. But what kind of relationship was it? That is what makes this story so mysterious. One theory quickly emerged, suggesting they may have been secret lovers. However, the location of the grave itself makes that theory seem almost impossible. The double burial was placed directly beside the church wall, an extremely sacred and honorable location in medieval Christian culture. You have to remember that during that era, same-sex relationships were considered grave sins. Medieval European laws and religious beliefs harshly condemned such relationships, and many people were even executed if discovered. Because of that, if these two women truly had been lovers, it is almost certain they would never have been granted burial in such a prestigious location beside an ancient church. And that only makes the mystery even harder to understand. If they were not relatives, not sisters, and not husband and wife, then why were they buried together in such an emotional and intimate way? Some believe they may have been close friends, caretakers, or people who endured a terrible tragedy together during their lives. Another theory suggests that one of them may have sacrificed herself to protect the other during a plague outbreak or a time of war. But as of today, all of these ideas remain nothing more than speculation. 78 skeletons reveal a brutal sacrificial ritual in ancient Korea. Have you ever wondered, behind the ancient beauty of old Asian dynasties, were there dark secrets that history never fully revealed? A ritual that forced entire families to die alongside their master. children buried alive together with their parents, and twisted bloodline relationships that continued through generations within the royal family. It all sounds like something out of a historical horror movie, doesn't it? But the terrifying part is that all of these stories have just been uncovered from real human skeletons excavated in South Korea. The story begins in Gyeongsan, a city located in southeastern South Korea in North Gyeongsang Province. This area lies near Gyeongju, the famous ancient capital of the Silla Kingdom, and it was here, within the ancient Imdang Joyeong burial complex, that scientists discovered dozens of tombs dating from the 4th to the 6th century AD during Korea's Three Kingdoms period. To help you picture it more clearly, at that time the Korean peninsula had not yet been unified as it is today. Instead, it was divided into three major kingdoms: Goguryeo, Baekje, and Silla. Among them, Silla was the kingdom that survived the longest and eventually unified nearly the entire Korean peninsula. But behind that glory may have existed a far more terrifying society than we ever imagined. According to a study recently published in the scientific journal Science Advances, a team of Korean and German researchers led by Seoul National University conducted DNA analysis on 78 skeletons discovered at the Imdang Joyeong Cemetery. And the deeper they went into the results, the more horrifying the discoveries became. First, the genetic data showed that many of the individuals buried there were closely related by blood. Specifically, researchers identified 11 first-degree relative pairs, such as parents and children or biological siblings, along with 23 second-degree relative pairs, including grandparents and grandchildren or aunts and nieces. This proves that ancient Silla people tended to bury family members close together after death. But that was only the surface. The truly horrifying part is that there were at least 3 cases in which parents and children appeared to have been buried at the same time. After comparing the findings with ancient historical records, scientists realized these may be traces of an ancient sacrificial ritual known as sunjang. In simple terms, when a powerful person died, close servants or attendants could be killed and buried alongside them in order to continue serving them in the afterlife. More than 1,500 years ago, entire families may have been sent into the grave simply because their master had died. And even more disturbing, this ritual was not limited to the lower classes. Archaeological evidence suggests that both royal family members and commoners were connected to these sacrificial practices. The burial arrangements within the cemetery also revealed an extremely clear class hierarchy in Silla society. Elite tomb owners were usually buried separately in large and elaborate graves. Meanwhile, servants or sacrificial victims were sometimes buried together like living grave goods. Just hearing that is enough to send chills down your spine, isn't it? But the scientists did not stop there. Using DNA data, the research team reconstructed 13 family trees spanning more than a century across 2 separate burial sites. And from this, they uncovered another disturbing secret of the Silla Kingdom: an extremely high rate of inbreeding. That means marriages between blood relatives occurred frequently in this ancient society, especially among powerful family lines. According to many researchers, these marriages within the family may have been intended to preserve noble bloodlines and strengthen family power, but the consequences made the social structure increasingly distorted and closed off. Another remarkable detail is that many of the reconstructed family trees were centered around maternal lineage. This suggests that maternal bloodlines may have played a far more important role in Silla society than historical records previously indicated. You see, from just 78 skeletons lying silently beneath the earth for thousands of years, an entire dark picture of ancient society has slowly emerged. A kingdom once praised for its brilliant culture and powerful rule may also have hidden brutal sacrificial rituals, inbred royal bloodlines, and a rigid class system that tightly bound human destiny to family lineage. Because of that, this research not only confirms the accuracy of historical records about Silla, but also helps scientists better understand how status, power, and even death were once controlled by bloodline laws in ancient Korean society. As frightening as these discoveries may be, they are also undeniably fascinating, aren't they? The massive pink stone door hiding an Egyptian prince's tomb. Inside was a 4,500-year-old treasure that stunned archaeologists. What if I told you that deep within Egypt's vast desert, a land that has buried countless secrets for thousands of years, Archaeologists have just uncovered a lost royal tomb featuring a gigantic pink stone door unlike anything ever seen before. A door nearly as tall as a two-story building, completely covered in ancient hieroglyphs, stood silently in the middle of the ancient Saqqara necropolis as if it were hiding something incredibly important behind it. Would you believe it? If not, then come with me to Saqqara, the famous ancient burial ground located about 25 miles southwest of Cairo, Egypt. Because it was here that archaeologists recently revealed exactly such a discovery. As many of you may know, Saqqara was once the most important royal cemetery of Memphis, the capital of Egypt during the Old Kingdom. For thousands of years, this sacred site served as the final resting place of pharaohs, princes, nobles, and some of the most powerful officials in ancient Egyptian history. Recently, during an excavation conducted by Egypt's Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities in collaboration with the Zahi Hawass Foundation for Archaeology and Heritage, archaeologists uncovered an extraordinary royal tomb. Initial analysis suggests the tomb belonged to Prince Wazir-Ifre, the son of Pharaoh Userkaf, the founder of Egypt's 5th dynasty, who ruled the country from approximately 2498 to 2491 BC. That means this tomb had remained buried beneath Egypt's scorching sands for nearly 4,500 years. But what shocked experts the most was not the tomb's age. It was the enormous pink granite door standing at its entrance. The massive structure measured nearly 15 feet tall and more than 3 feet wide, carved entirely from rare pink granite. Even transporting such an enormous stone block thousands of years ago would have seemed almost impossible. Yet strangely, this was only a false door, a type of architectural feature commonly found in ancient Egyptian tombs, believed to serve as a spiritual gateway for the soul of the deceased. Across the surface of the door, archaeologists discovered beautifully carved hieroglyphic inscriptions. The writings revealed several titles held by Prince Wazir-Ifre, including Hereditary Prince, Governor of Buto and Nekheb, and Royal Scribe. Just from those titles alone, it is clear that he was an extremely powerful figure within the royal court of ancient Egypt. But the secrets hidden deeper inside the tomb were even more astonishing. On the eastern facade, the excavation team uncovered another granite entrance engraved with the name of Prince Wazir-Ifre, alongside images of Pharaoh Nefertari, the 3rd king of the 5th dynasty. This suggests the tomb was connected not only to a royal family member, but also to an entire era of political power in ancient Egypt. As archaeologists ventured farther inside, they discovered a total of 13 pink granite statues seated on high-backed chairs, as if they had been silently guarding the tomb for thousands of years. Some of the human-headed statues are believed to represent the wives of Prince Wazir-Ifre. In addition, researchers found 2 headless statues and a black granite statue that had toppled onto its side, creating an atmosphere that felt both mysterious and deeply unsettling within the ancient burial chamber. And the discoveries did not stop there. The expedition also uncovered a red granite offering table engraved with a detailed list of ritual items used in ancient ceremonies. Most remarkable of all was a black granite statue standing about 3.8 feet tall, depicting a man in an upright pose. After further analysis, experts determined that this statue actually belonged to Egypt's 26th dynasty, meaning it was created much later than the time of Prince Wazir-Ifre. That discovery led researchers to a fascinating theory. The tomb may have been reopened and reused multiple times throughout ancient Egyptian history. Just think about that for a moment. A tomb that survived for more than 4 millennia, passing through multiple dynasties, may have witnessed countless secrets that modern humanity still cannot fully understand. But perhaps the most surprising discovery was yet to come. Inside the tomb, archaeologists also found a group of statues depicting Pharaoh Djoser, his queen, and their 10 daughters. If you have ever explored the mysteries of ancient Egypt, then the name Djoser is probably already familiar to you. Djoser was the famous pharaoh who ruled Egypt around the 27th century BC during the 3rd dynasty, and he is best known as the ruler who commissioned the world's very first step pyramid. Preliminary analysis suggests these statues were originally placed in a chamber near Djoser's step pyramid, before later being moved to the tomb of Prince Wazir-Ifre in Saqqara. And that raises a series of new questions. Who moved those statues? Why did they end up inside the tomb of a prince from a completely different dynasty? And beneath the still unexcavated chambers of Saqqara, how many more secrets are waiting to be discovered? Because in ancient Egypt, every door that is opened seems to reveal an even greater mystery hidden behind it. Unfortunately, to this day, those questions remain buried in darkness, and no one truly has the answers yet. The lost palace of Genghis Khan's grandson reveals an 800-year-old secret of the Mongol Empire. Have you ever imagined that hidden among the cold and desolate plains of eastern Turkey, a place where almost no traces of the past seem to remain today, there once stood a massive palace belonging to a direct descendant of Genghis Khan? A mysterious summer palace that once served as the resting place of one of the most powerful Khans of the Mongol Empire, only to vanish from history for hundreds of years as if it had never existed. And what is truly astonishing is that after centuries of surviving only in vague ancient texts, that palace has finally begun to reappear from beneath the earth. Sounds unbelievable, doesn't it? But fascinatingly, it is completely real, and it is happening in the Taldaran Plain of eastern Turkey, the nation that sits between Asia and Europe and once served as a crossroads for countless ancient civilizations. For many years, historians believed that somewhere within this region, there once existed a palace that also functioned as the summer capital of Hulagu Khan, the famous grandson of Genghis Khan. If you are unfamiliar with him, Hulagu Khan was one of the most powerful rulers during the height of the Mongol Empire. He ruled from 1256 to 1265 as a Mongol Khan and was also the founder of the Ilkhanate, a vast empire formed from territories conquered by the Mongols, stretching across present-day Iraq, Tajikistan, Turkey, and even Pakistan. But for centuries, although many ancient records mentioned Hulagu Khan's summer palace, no one knew exactly where it was located. That was until a team of 8 experts from Turkey and Mongolia launched a major survey in the Chalderan Plain. The research was led by Professor Ersel, head of the Turkish Islamic Archaeology Department at Izmir Katip Çelebi University. At first, the team only hoped to uncover a few small traces that could confirm what history had recorded. But then the clues began appearing in ways nobody expected. During a survey conducted last month, the researchers discovered an ancient pottery kiln along with numerous ceramic fragments dating back to the Ilkhanate period, the very dynasty founded by Hulagu Khan after the Mongol conquests. To us, that may not sound extraordinary, but to archaeologists, it was like finding the first missing piece of a massive secret. Because wherever large-scale pottery kilns existed, there was usually once a densely populated settlement or an important center of power nearby. Things became even more exciting when the team continued uncovering caravanserais, ancient roadside inns commonly built along major trade routes to serve merchants and traveling caravans. Hundreds of years ago, groups of traders riding horses and camels may have passed through this very land, stopping to rest before entering the political center of Mongol power. All of these discoveries seem to guide archaeologists toward one unavoidable conclusion. They were standing extremely close to the lost palace of Hulagu Khan, and indeed, the most important moment finally arrived. After several more days of excavation, the team uncovered additional ancient ruins that had suffered extremely severe destruction. Although most of the structure had been reduced to rubble, experts believe these remains are the surviving traces of the legendary summer palace described in historical records. What strengthened their confidence even further was the number of valuable artifacts found at the site. Among the ruins, archaeologists recovered large quantities of ancient roof tiles, glazed bricks, pottery, and especially finely crafted tricolored glazed porcelain fragments. These materials were commonly used in royal buildings or structures built for powerful elites during the Middle Ages. Even though the palace itself had nearly been erased by time, the remaining pottery shards and bricks still quietly tell the story of an empire that once made the entire world tremble in fear. 3 ancient tombs sealed with iron nails to stop the dead from returning beneath the soil of Rome. My friends, what do you think ancient people feared most after death? Was it a soul unable to move on, or the terrifying idea that the dead themselves could return from the underworld? For the ancient Romans, they truly believed it could happen. They believed the dead might come back from beyond the grave seeking revenge. and evidence of that belief was uncovered recently when workers preparing to build a new student dormitory in southern Rome unexpectedly discovered an entire ancient cemetery buried for nearly 2,000 years. But the most chilling part was not the skeletons or the ancient graves themselves. It was the object placed directly on the chests of the dead: 3 iron nails. According to ancient Roman beliefs, these nails were used to prevent the dead from rising again. The story began along Via Ostiense, near the famous Basilica of St. Paul, outside the walls in Rome, the capital of Italy. Before construction on the new dormitory could begin, Italy's Ministry of Culture ordered a preventive archaeological excavation to examine the land beneath the site. No one could have imagined that this survey would uncover an entirely unknown section of the ancient Ostiense necropolis, a cemetery archaeologists had already been studying since 1919. During the excavation, archaeologists discovered 3 ancient tombs dating back approximately 1,800 years. Inside each tomb was a skeleton buried in an incredibly strange manner. Resting silently on the chest of each deceased person was an iron nail that had remained untouched for nearly 2 millennia. Just think about that for a moment. Nearly 2,000 years ago, what were people so terrified of that they felt the need to nail down the dead before burying them? According to archaeologist Daletta Menghinello from the Special Superintendency of Rome under Italy's Ministry of Culture, this was actually part of a burial ritual practiced during ancient Roman times and continued through later periods as well. People believed iron nails had the power to lock the soul of the deceased in place, preventing them from returning as vampires or other dangerous supernatural entities. Sounds like mythology, doesn't it? But the frightening reality is that these rituals truly existed in history. This discovery shows that the ancient Romans did not simply believe in the afterlife. They also carried a deep fear that the dead could return to haunt the living. And perhaps because of that fear, they created all kinds of rituals meant to restrain the body before burial. But these 3 graves containing such strange objects were only a small part of the shocking discoveries beneath the ground of Rome. According to Heritage Daily, archaeologists went on to uncover many more tombs from the same era as well as from later periods. Several of the graves were exceptionally well preserved, providing experts with valuable clues about ancient Roman burial customs and spiritual beliefs. Not long afterward, the research team also excavated a cluster of 5 large funerary structures dating back to the Roman Empire, located about 3 feet beneath the surface. These structures were built in quadrangular shapes with ancient vaulted roofs and arranged along a northeast to southwest axis, resembling a carefully planned cemetery complex from thousands of years ago. In front of these larger structures stood 2 smaller funerary buildings, along with another similar structure built perpendicular to them, forming a burial complex far larger than researchers had originally imagined. Isn't it incredible? A place where students today may one day study, live, and spend their daily lives was once a literal city of the dead during ancient Roman times. But the mystery does not end there. Near the burial area, researchers also discovered a semicircular hall and a large brick-built chamber containing clear traces of ancient mosaic flooring. To this day, the true purpose of these structures remains unknown. They may once have served as locations for funeral ceremonies, religious gatherings, or spiritual rituals connected to the Roman dead. And the deeper archaeologists excavated, the more they realized the astonishing scale of the ancient Ostiense cemetery. The 28,000-year-old tomb of a child hybrid between Homo sapiens and Neanderthals, a discovery that could rewrite human history. What would happen if everything we thought we knew about the extinction of the Neanderthals was not entirely correct? For decades, scientists believed that Neanderthals disappeared from Earth around 40,000 years ago. But in 1998, in Portugal's Lapido Valley, a region in southwestern Europe, the excavation of an ancient grave sparked intense debate about the history of human evolution. Inside that grave was the skeleton of a child with features that did not belong entirely to any single human species. It had the chin of a Homo sapiens, but the legs of a Neanderthal. And the latest findings show that this child was buried approximately 28,000 years ago, thousands of years later than the accepted timeline for Neanderthal extinction. Just think about that for a moment. Wouldn't that force humanity's entire evolutionary timeline to be rewritten? The story began in 1998, when archaeologists started excavations in the Lapido Valley, one of Portugal's most famous prehistoric archaeological sites. At first, researchers believed it was simply an ordinary prehistoric location, but the moment the first skeleton emerged from the ancient red soil, experts realized they were standing before something extraordinarily unusual. It was the skeleton of a child. What shocked scientists around the world was that the child's body appeared to contain characteristics from two different human species. The prominent chin closely resembled that of Homo sapiens, modern humans like us today. But the legs were short, thick, and powerfully built in the distinctive style associated with Neanderthals, the ancient human species that once lived across Ice Age Europe. The skeleton also displayed several other mixed anatomical traits from both species, making it nearly impossible for researchers to ignore the most astonishing theory of all. This child may have been a hybrid. And as you probably know, back in the late 1990s, the idea that Homo sapiens and Neanderthals could have children together was still highly controversial. But years later, as ancient DNA sequencing technology advanced dramatically, scientists finally confirmed that the seemingly impossible was true. The Lapido child really was the result of interbreeding between Homo sapiens and Neanderthals. This showed that our ancestors did not merely encounter other ancient human species, they also mixed genetically with them for thousands of years. But then an even greater mystery emerged. One of the biggest challenges in studying ancient burial sites is determining the true age of human remains. After tens of thousands of years underground, bones often become contaminated by surrounding environmental materials, making traditional dating methods unreliable. For years, researchers attempted 4 separate times to date the Lapido child, using conventional radiocarbon analysis. However, the results were never precise enough to reach a final conclusion. That changed recently when scientists applied a modern technique known as compound-specific radiocarbon analysis, or CSRA, and the final results stunned the archaeological world. According to the new study, the grave of the Lapido child dates back approximately 28,000 years, thousands of years older than previous estimates had suggested. At first glance, that may sound like just a number, but for human history, it was like a bombshell. Because if Neanderthals supposedly became extinct around 40,000 years ago, then why was a child carrying Neanderthal ancestry still appearing 28,000 years ago? That question has led many scientists to propose that Neanderthals may have survived much longer than history once believed. Or at the very least, their bloodline may have continued through generations of hybrid offspring with Homo sapiens. In other words, the disappearance of the Neanderthals may not have been sudden at all, but perhaps the strangest mystery lies within the burial site itself. According to researchers, after the Lapido child was buried, the surrounding area appears to have been abandoned for nearly 2,000 years. There is no evidence of hunting, settlement, or regular human activity there for a very long time afterward. Researcher João Zilão from the University of Barcelona in Spain believes the child's death may have turned the area into forbidden ground for the ancient community living there at the time. Perhaps they believed the child was special in some way, or perhaps the existence of an individual carrying the blood of 2 different human species filled people with fear. Tens of thousands of years ago, during an era when humans survived through hunting and gathering, the appearance of a child who did not completely resemble anyone else may have been viewed as something mysterious and beyond human understanding. And even today, the ancient grave in Portugal's Lapido Valley remains one of the most controversial discoveries in the history of archaeology. That is why archaeologists often say, the deeper humanity digs into the past, the more we realize that the true story of our origins may be far more complicated and far stranger than history has ever told us. The real tomb of the legendary D'Artagnan, discovered after more than 350 years. Have you ever wondered where someone known around the world through novels, movies, and legendary sword fights would be laid to rest after death? Most people would probably assume the answer is simple, that they'd be buried somewhere ordinary, just like everyone else. But when it comes to D'Artagnan, the legendary captain of the Musketeers who served under Kings Louis XIII and Louis XIV of France, and the real-life inspiration behind the famous novel The Three Musketeers, the answer remained a mystery for more than 350 years. What's even more fascinating is that this mystery didn't begin with a grand archaeological expedition. Instead, It all started with a surprisingly ordinary accident. Here's what happened. In February 2026, the floor of an ancient church in the Wolder district of Maastricht, the Netherlands, suddenly began to sink. At first, that might not sound like anything extraordinary. You might be thinking, if the floor sinks, you just repair it. But that seemingly minor incident soon captured the attention of archaeologists across Europe. While reinforcing the area beneath the church altar, construction workers discovered a hidden cavity beneath the floor. As they dug deeper, they uncovered an ancient tomb located directly beneath the church's main altar. Just imagine that for a moment, a grave resting beneath the altar itself, the holiest part of the church, a place that during the Middle Ages was typically reserved for only the most important individuals. That fact alone was enough to convince researchers that they were dealing with something highly unusual. The church's deacon, Jos Valky, immediately contacted archaeologist Wim Dijkman, a researcher who had spent nearly 30 years pursuing one question: where was D'Artagnan really buried? For Dijkman, it was one of those moments that no researcher ever truly expects, a discovery that had the potential to change an entire career. Once the official excavation began, archaeologists carefully removed layer after layer of soil until a human skeleton slowly emerged beneath the altar. What immediately stood out was the burial location itself. This was clearly not an ordinary grave. Its prestigious position strongly suggested that the individual had once held an exceptionally high status in society. But the real turning point came when archaeologists made a discovery that stopped everyone in their tracks. Embedded in the skeleton's chest was an ancient musket ball. The coincidence was almost unbelievable. Historical records describe D'Artagnan's death during the Siege of Maastricht in 1673, where he was fatally struck in the chest by a musket shot while fighting on the battlefield. As if that weren't enough, archaeologists also uncovered a 17th-century French coin inside the tomb. It may have seemed like a small detail, but it added another important piece to the puzzle, supporting the theory that the individual buried there may have been a high-ranking French officer who served under King Louis XIV. The skeleton's burial position also raised new questions. Rather than lying neatly in place, the body was slightly tilted, almost as though it had been placed inside a cramped space in haste. Taken together, these clues led researchers to focus on one remarkable historical figure, Charles de Batz de Castelmore, the real D'Artagnan. Born in the Gascony region of France, he faithfully served both King Louis XIII and King Louis XIV, earning a reputation for his unwavering loyalty and remarkable military achievements. It was this very man who later inspired Alexandre Dumas to create the immortal literary hero known simply as D'Artagnan. Today, the skeleton has been transferred to an archaeological institute in Deventer for further scientific analysis. At the same time, DNA samples have been sent to Munich, Germany, where researchers are comparing them with genetic material provided by descendants of the D'Artagnan family. In other words, the investigation has not yet reached a final conclusion. 3,000-year-old ancient zoo discovered in China. Did you know that 3,000 years ago, people had their own unique way of keeping wild animals? Not in zoos like we have today, but in a remarkably sophisticated system closely tied to royal power, religious rituals, and mysteries that archaeologists are only now beginning to uncover. And the most surprising part? The evidence has just been discovered in China. Specifically, during excavations carried out between 2023 and 2024 at the Yinshu Archaeological Site in Anyang, Henan Province, China, archaeologists uncovered a complex of 19 ancient sacrificial pits spread across an area of approximately 13,350 square feet. At first glance, those numbers may not seem particularly remarkable, but once researchers looked inside the pits, they were completely stunned. Why? Because instead of pottery, weapons, or other ordinary artifacts, they found the carefully buried remains of numerous wild animals arranged in an exceptionally organized manner. The discoveries included deer, wolves, tigers, leopards, foxes, gorals, wild boars, Asian water buffalo, and even birds such as swans, cranes, and geese. But the detail that truly sent chills through the archaeological community came next. Several of the animal skeletons were found wearing bronze bells around their necks, and in total, researchers uncovered 29 bronze bells. Just think about that for a moment. Wild animals wearing bells. Doesn't that suggest they may have been kept under control within an enclosed space? It was precisely this detail that led Niu Shishan, a researcher at the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences, to propose a fascinating theory. According to him, these animals may not have been captured from the wild immediately before being sacrificed. Instead, they were likely kept and managed in specially designated enclosures under the control of Shang dynasty kings or members of the royal aristocracy. In other words, as far back as 3,000 years ago, there may already have been a highly organized system for managing wild animals rather than simply hunting them for ritual sacrifices. And the discoveries didn't stop there. As archaeologists continued their analysis, they noticed that the different animal species had been arranged inside the pits according to consistent patterns. This strongly suggests that their placement was intentional and may have formed part of elaborate sacrificial ceremonies practiced during the Shang dynasty, which ruled from approximately 1600 to 1046 BC and is widely recognized as one of the earliest civilizations in Chinese history. If you've heard of Yinshu before, you'll know that it is no ordinary archaeological site. It was the final capital of the Shang dynasty, famous for its royal tombs, oracle bones, and ceremonial traditions of enormous cultural and religious significance. That makes the discovery of what appears to be a carefully controlled system for keeping wild animals even more extraordinary. Interestingly, this isn't the first time archaeologists have encountered evidence of what could be described as an ancient zoo. Earlier archaeological sites dating to the Warring States period also revealed sacrificial pits containing rare animals, including extinct ape species, leopards, Asian black bears, and lynxes. What makes Yinshu different, however, is how much clearer and more systematically organized the evidence appears to be. That raises an intriguing question. Just how much control over nature did people possess 3,000 years ago? Were these animals kept solely for sacrificial rituals, or did they also serve as symbols of royal authority and political power in ways we still don't fully understand? And perhaps most importantly, if a royal animal enclosure like this truly existed, how many more secrets of the Shang dynasty are still buried beneath the earth, waiting to be uncovered? 1,600-year-old estate, discovered beneath Kafr Qasim, reveals the wealth of the ancient Samaritans. What if I told you that beneath the ground of modern-day Israel, archaeologists have just uncovered a luxurious estate that existed more than 1,600 years ago? Even more fascinating, this discovery wasn't made during a planned excavation for its own sake. Instead, it came to light while heavy machinery was preparing the site for a brand new residential development. Would you believe it? If not, let's travel back to 2024. That year, archaeologists from the Israel Antiquities Authority, IAA, carried out a routine excavation ahead of the construction of a new housing project near Kafr Qasim in northern Israel. During the excavation, they made an astonishing discovery: a massive archaeological complex hidden beneath the surface. The site turned out to be a 1,600-year-old agricultural estate located within the ancient archaeological area of Kafr Hada. At this point, you might be wondering, an ancient estate? What's so unusual about that? That's a fair question. Ancient estates aren't exactly rare, but this one is different because buried beneath the soil wasn't just a single building. It was an extensive residential and agricultural complex that had supported an entire community for centuries. Researchers determined that the site had once been home to the Samaritans, a community that lived in the region from the late Roman period through the Byzantine era, roughly between the 4th and 7th centuries AD. What immediately caught archaeologists' attention was the remarkable level of wealth reflected in the surviving architecture. Inside the estate, they uncovered an exquisitely crafted mosaic floor, decorated with intricate geometric patterns alongside images of fruits such as grapes, dates, and watermelon. One look at the floor is enough to tell you this was no ordinary farmhouse. It clearly belonged to someone of considerable wealth and social status. But the discoveries didn't end there. Near the entrance to one of the rooms, archaeologists uncovered part of an ancient Greek inscription bearing the phrase Mazal Tov, meaning good luck. It may sound like a simple greeting, but it provides valuable insight into the cultural and religious influences that shaped the Samaritan community during that period. And now we come to the discovery that truly amazed researchers. Within the estate, archaeologists also uncovered an impressively advanced agricultural production system, including a large olive oil press, a spacious storage facility, and a public ritual purification bath, known as a mikveh, located on the northern side of the complex. What's particularly remarkable is that the olive oil press was anything but ordinary. It featured 2 screw presses and a large crushing basin, a level of engineering more commonly associated with the Jerusalem region than with Samaria. This suggests that the estate wasn't merely a place to live. It also served as an important center of agricultural production. According to Dr. Alan Nagorsky and Dr. Daniel Leahy Griswold, the co-directors of the excavation for the Israel Antiquities Authority, everything from the elaborate mosaic floor to the sophisticated production facilities reflects an exceptionally prosperous period in the history of the Samaritan community that once lived here. In other words, this truly was a wealthy estate by the standards of the ancient world. Of course, the story doesn't end with luxury alone. As archaeologists studied the site's history more closely, they discovered clear evidence that the estate had undergone major changes over time. New walls had been built directly over the original mosaic floors. Decorative columns had been dismantled and reused as construction materials elsewhere in the complex. In other words, what had once been an elegant residence was gradually transformed into a space dedicated primarily to agricultural production. Researchers believe this transformation may be connected to historical events, particularly the Samaritan revolts against the Byzantine Empire during the 5th and 6th centuries AD. Even so, one detail makes this site especially remarkable. Unlike many settlements of the period, the estate was not completely destroyed. Instead, it continued to be occupied and used for a considerable length of time. The strangely beautiful Egyptian mummy that no archaeologist dares to unwrap. As you know, the world of archaeology is filled with mysteries that spark our curiosity and ignite our imagination. Some mysteries can be solved almost immediately. Others become even more mysterious the longer we study them, so much so that researchers eventually become afraid to disturb them. The mummy known as Bashiri is one of those mysteries. It isn't a legend or the invention of a Hollywood movie. It is a real archaeological artifact, preserved in the Egyptian Museum in Cairo, and for more than 100 years, scientists have deliberately left its linen wrappings untouched. The story begins in 1919, in the Valley of the Kings near Luxor, Egypt, a place long regarded as the most sacred burial ground of Egypt's ancient royal tombs. During excavations there, the renowned archaeologist Howard Carter, who would later astonish the world with the discovery of King Tutankhamun's tomb, came across an extraordinary mummy inside a tomb dating to the Ptolemaic period. From the very first moment, what caught everyone's attention wasn't the coffin. It was the mummy itself. The linen wrappings surrounding the body had been arranged with such astonishing precision that they looked less like ordinary burial cloths and more like an intricate work of art. The overlapping bands of linen formed elaborate geometric patterns across the face, creating an appearance reminiscent of the architecture of a pyramid carefully recreated on the human body. It was at that moment that archaeologists made an extraordinary decision. No one would be allowed to unwrap this mummy. The reason sounds simple, but for archaeologists, it was absolutely critical. The wrappings are incredibly fragile. Even the slightest physical disturbance could permanently destroy this one-of-a-kind masterpiece. And so Bashiri became known as the untouchable mummy. But don't misunderstand. That doesn't mean scientists have been unable to study it. Over the following decades, researchers turned to advanced non-invasive technologies, including CT scans and X-rays, allowing them to examine the mummy without removing a single strip of linen. What they discovered was remarkable. Inside the wrappings lies the body of a man standing approximately 5 feet 6 inches tall. He was mummified during the Ptolemaic period, roughly between the 2nd and early 3rd centuries BC, an era when the art of Egyptian mummification had reached an extraordinary level of sophistication. Yet what truly sets this mummy apart isn't what's hidden beneath the wrappings. It's what appears on the outside. Across the mummy's chest is an elaborate beaded collar composed of multiple rows of beads and decorated with the image of a falcon's head, a powerful symbol of authority, prestige, and wealth in ancient Egyptian society. It wasn't merely decorative, it served as a statement of the deceased's high social standing during life. The decorations continue across the body, revealing an even deeper layer of symbolism. The deceased is depicted lying upon a funerary bed while being protected by the goddesses Isis and Nephthys, divine guardians believed to watch over souls on their journey into the afterlife. Nearby appear the 4 sons of Horus, Dua Mutef, Kebe Senuef, Hapi, and Imsidi, the deities responsible for protecting the internal organs removed during the ancient Egyptian mummification process. And the symbolism doesn't end there. Near the feet appears the figure of Anubis, the god most closely associated with death, embalming, and funeral rites. Taken together, these images represent far more than artistic decoration. They form an extraordinarily complex system of religious symbolism, strongly suggesting that the individual buried inside belonged to the highest levels of ancient Egyptian society. Yet despite all these clues, the greatest mystery remains unsolved. No one knows exactly who this mummy is. Only a faint inscription survived inside the tomb. It may read Bashiri or perhaps Nino, but even today experts cannot determine its true meaning with certainty. As a result, for more than a century, the mummy has remained exactly as it was discovered. No one has dared to remove the wrappings. No one has been willing to sacrifice its remarkable state of preservation. And perhaps that's precisely what makes Bashiri so extraordinary. It is more than just a mummy. It is a living mystery, a reminder that some questions from history become even more profound the closer we come to answering them, sometimes forcing us to stop and wonder whether preserving the mystery is just as important as solving it. Two ancient boats with a one-of-a-kind design could rewrite the history of ancient trade in Vietnam. There's something fascinating about archaeology that many people don't realize. Some of history's greatest discoveries aren't made during excavations planned years in advance. Instead, they often begin with the most ordinary events imaginable. Sometimes a farmer accidentally strikes an ancient artifact while digging a field. Sometimes a construction project unexpectedly exposes an ancient tomb. And this time was no different. A simple plan to renovate a fish pond in Vietnam ended up awakening a secret that had lain hidden beneath the earth for thousands of years. The discovery took place in December 2024 in Cang Ha neighborhood, Ha Man Ward, Thuan Thanh Town, Bac Ninh Province, Vietnam. While an excavator was dredging the bottom of a fish pond, Nguyen Van Chien, an ordinary local farmer, suddenly noticed an enormous wooden object emerging from the mud. At first, everyone assumed it was nothing more than an ancient tree trunk, but as more of it came into view, its shape looked strikingly like the bow of a boat. Instead of continuing to dig, Mr. Chien immediately ordered all excavation work to stop. Having long been interested in historical artifacts, he had a feeling this was no ordinary piece of wood. That seemingly small decision ultimately saved what is now considered one of the most remarkable archaeological discoveries ever made in Vietnam. As soon as the discovery was reported, the Bac Ninh Department of Culture, Sports and Tourism, working together with the Institute of Archaeology, rushed to the site. As archaeologists carefully removed layer after layer of mud, they could hardly believe what they were seeing. At the bottom of the pond lay not one, but two enormous wooden boats, resting side by side. What astonished researchers even more was that their construction was unlike any ancient boats previously discovered in Vietnam. Each vessel measures approximately 52.5 feet long and nearly 6.5 feet wide. The hull of each boat is divided into 6 separate compartments, but the most extraordinary feature, and one never before documented, is found at the front, where the two boats are connected by a sturdy wooden beam. Even experts who have spent decades studying ancient watercraft admitted they had never encountered a design like this before. Naturally, one question immediately comes to mind. Why would ancient builders connect two boats together? Was it designed to transport heavy cargo, to cross rivers more safely, or could it represent an entirely different type of vessel that historians have yet to identify? Those are exactly the questions archaeologists are now trying to answer. According to Dr. Pham Van Trio, the director of the excavation, every step of the recovery process had to be carried out with extraordinary care. After spending hundreds, or perhaps even thousands of years buried in waterlogged mud, the wood had deteriorated to such an extent that direct sunlight or even a single hard impact could cause the hulls to crack apart. For that reason, workers were prohibited from using metal tools. Instead, they carefully scraped away the mud using small wooden implements, exposing the boats little by little. As they cleaned out each compartment, the scientists made another fascinating discovery. They found numerous tiny preserved plant seeds scattered inside the boats. Those seeds may seem insignificant, but according to researchers, they could provide some of the most valuable evidence of all. By identifying them, scientists may be able to determine what kinds of goods were once stored in each compartment, where those goods originated, and where they were transported. If that evidence can be fully decoded, it could dramatically improve our understanding of ancient trade networks centered around Louis Lo thousands of years ago. And that brings us to perhaps the most important piece of the puzzle. Louis Lo was once the capital of Jiaoji, serving for centuries during the early Common Era as the largest political, commercial, and religious center in what is now northern Vietnam. Previous excavations conducted in 1999, 2014, and 2024 uncovered bronze drum casting molds, metallurgical workshops, and more than 2,300 mold fragments, providing compelling evidence that Louis Lo was one of the most important bronze production centers of ancient Vietnam. With that history in mind, many experts believe these newly discovered boats were far more than simple means of transportation. The 29,000-year-old skeleton of a child discovered in Thailand. If you had the chance to travel back nearly 30,000 years, what do you think Southeast Asia would have looked like? Would the region we know today have already been divided by seas and islands? Or was it once a vast stretch of connected land where the earliest humans wandered, hunted, and struggled to survive? It sounds like the plot of a science fiction story, doesn't it? But recently, the discovery of a tiny human skeleton deep inside a cave in Thailand, a small country in Southeast Asia, has made those questions more relevant than ever. What makes this discovery even more remarkable is that the central figure in this story wasn't a king, a warrior, or the leader of an ancient tribe. It was simply a child about 6 to 8 years old, a young life that ended during a time when humans still lived in the wild. Yet after nearly 30,000 years, this child has become the key to unlocking an entirely new chapter in the history of Southeast Asia. This extraordinary discovery was announced by Thailand's Fine Arts Department following excavations at Din Cave, a cave located on a mountainside about 410 feet above sea level. Din Cave was already well known to archaeologists. As early as 1996, it gained international attention after researchers discovered numerous prehistoric rock paintings depicting people, animals, and mysterious red symbols covering many of the cave walls. Those paintings had long convinced scientists that humans had lived here thousands of years ago. What they never imagined was that beneath the cave floor lay an even older secret. During the latest excavation, archaeologists expanded the area where pottery fragments, stone tools, and animal bones had previously been uncovered. As they dug to a depth of approximately 6.5 feet below the cave floor, they were astonished to discover human bones that remained almost exactly where they had originally been buried. As each layer of soil was carefully removed, the entire skeleton gradually emerged. The child was affectionately given the nickname Pangpond, after a beloved Thai cartoon character. But what truly amazed researchers wasn't just the skeleton's incredible age. It was the way the child had been buried. The body was laid on its back, with the head facing southwest. Carefully arranged stones surrounded the remains, almost like a protective ring. The feet had been placed closely together, leading archaeologists to believe the body may have been wrapped or bound with organic materials that decomposed long ago. Just think about that for a moment. Nearly 30,000 years ago, people took such care when burying one of their own. What does that tell us? Doesn't it suggest that these early humans did more than simply survive? Perhaps they had already developed funeral rituals, spiritual beliefs, and deep emotional bonds with those they loved. Initial analysis indicates that Pangpon died between the ages of 6 and 8. The bones display a reddish-brown coloration and still preserve traces of ash, suggesting that both the burial environment and the funeral activities left evidence that survived for tens of thousands of years. To determine the age of the burial, scientists sent charcoal and shell samples collected from the soil layers above the skeleton to the Beta Analytic Laboratory in the United States for radiocarbon dating. The results showed that those upper layers dated between 11,000 and 29,000 years ago. Because the skeleton was buried beneath every one of those layers, researchers concluded that Pangpon must be more than 29,000 years old, dating to the late Pleistocene. That makes it the oldest human skeleton ever discovered in Thailand, significantly older than any previous human remains found in the country. According to Panam Butra Chandrashoti, Director General of Thailand's Fine Arts Department, this is a groundbreaking discovery because it has the potential to change our understanding of the earliest human presence in Southeast Asia. The importance of this discovery becomes even clearer when we consider the world of the late Pleistocene. At that time, sea levels were far lower than they are today. A massive landmass known as Sundaland connected much of what is now Southeast Asia into a single continuous landscape. Because of this, Pangpon could represent a crucial link in helping scientists trace the migration, adaptation, and development of the first human communities to spread across this region. Rare 250-year-old cold bath discovered in England amazes archaeologists. Can you believe it? The ice bath trend that so many athletes, celebrities, and health experts constantly share on social media today isn't actually anything new. In fact, hundreds, even thousands of years ago, people had already discovered the health benefits of cold water. But what truly surprised archaeologists is that they recently uncovered evidence showing that people in England built a public cold bath about 250 years ago. Even more remarkably, it may be the only surviving structure of its kind ever discovered. The discovery was announced following an archaeological excavation beneath the bath assembly rooms in the city of Bath, Somerset, England. As part of a restoration and research project, archaeologists carefully removed layers of concrete, brick, stone, and wartime debris. Then, beneath what appeared to be an ordinary floor, they uncovered an astonishingly well-preserved structure that revealed a very different story about life in 18th century England. When people hear the name Bath, they usually think of its famous hot springs. And for good reason. Founded around the 1st century AD, Bath quickly became one of Britain's most important centers for culture, religion, and leisure. During the Roman Empire, the city became world famous for its magnificent hot baths, which remain among Europe's most iconic archaeological landmarks to this day. But here's something many people don't know. More than 2 centuries ago, the people of Bath were just as enthusiastic about cold water as they were about hot mineral springs. It may sound surprising, but during the 18th and 19th centuries, many British physicians believed that regular cold water bathing could improve both physical and mental health. At the time, the practice was recommended to help treat a variety of illnesses, including gout, a condition that was especially common among the aristocracy. As a result, cold baths gradually began appearing alongside traditional hot spring facilities in popular spa towns like Bath. What makes this newly discovered structure particularly fascinating is its location. It wasn't part of an ordinary public bathhouse. Instead, it was built directly beneath the bath assembly rooms, a grand building completed in 1771. In its bay, this was where Britain's upper class gathered to dance, attend concerts, socialize, play cards and billiards, drink coffee, and mingle with society's most influential figures. You could think of it as one of England's premier entertainment and social centers of the 18th century. According to guidebooks about the city of Bath published in 1778, the complex once featured a spacious cold bath, complete with comfortable changing rooms. That suggests cold water immersion wasn't viewed solely as a medical treatment. It had also become part of the refined lifestyle enjoyed by the wealthy. Over time, however, traces of the structure gradually disappeared. 20 tombs buried for more than 2,600 years, discovered in Egypt. On December 19th, an Egyptian archaeological mission announced a discovery that immediately captured the attention of researchers around the world. While excavating the Tel El Deir archaeological site in Damietta Governorate, northern Egypt, the team uncovered 20 ancient tombs dating to Egypt's late period, which lasted from approximately 664 to 332 BC. At first glance, the site appeared to be nothing more than an ancient cemetery long buried beneath the sands of time. But as archaeologists dug deeper, what emerged convinced many experts that this discovery could reshape our understanding of the history of the entire Damietta region. According to Mustafa Waziri, Secretary General of Egypt's Supreme Council of Antiquities, the newly discovered cemetery contains several different types of burials. Some tombs were carefully constructed from mud bricks and built to last. Others, however, contained individuals who had been buried much more simply, with little or no architectural structure surrounding them. This contrast suggests that ancient Egyptian society may have included multiple social classes whose burial customs differed significantly from one another. What especially caught archaeologists' attention is that several of the mud brick tombs appear to date to the 26th dynasty, also known as the Sate dynasty. whose pharaohs ruled Egypt from approximately 664 to 525 BC. Of course, this remains a hypothesis for now, but if it is confirmed, these tombs could become an invaluable source of information about a period of Egyptian history that still contains many unanswered questions. The real surprise, however, began when archaeologists started opening the tombs one by one. Resting directly above the skeletal remains, they discovered numerous thin sheets of gold that had once been placed over the bodies of the deceased. These golden pieces were valuable not only because of the precious metal itself, but also because they had been carefully crafted into images of sacred Egyptian deities. Some depicted Isis, the goddess associated with motherhood and rebirth. Others portrayed Bastet, the famous cat-headed goddess of protection. Most striking of all were images of Horus in the form of a falcon with outstretched wings, a powerful symbol of royal authority and divine protection for the deceased on their journey into the afterlife. And the discoveries didn't stop there. The excavation team also recovered numerous amulets of various shapes and sizes. In ancient Egyptian belief, these objects were far more than decorative jewelry. They were believed to protect the soul from evil spirits and help the dead overcome the challenges they would face in eternity. Do you think that's everything? Not even close. Within the burial complex, archaeologists also discovered an ancient headrest, an artifact commonly associated with the burial rituals of people with high social status. At the same time, they uncovered several canopic jars representing the four sons of Horus. According to ancient Egyptian beliefs, after the internal organs were removed during the mummification process, they were placed inside these specially designed jars so the gods could protect them, allowing the deceased to be reborn in the afterlife. Researchers also recovered a collection of small statues depicting well-known deities such as Isis, Nephthys, and Jehudi, Thoth. Together, these discoveries show that the funerary rituals practiced at Tel el-Deir were carried out with remarkable care and deep spiritual significance. What's particularly noteworthy is that this isn't the first time Tel el-Deir has surprised archaeologists. Previous excavations at the site uncovered tombs dating to several different historical periods. The overlapping layers of cemeteries built over many centuries reveal that Tel el-Deir was continuously inhabited by different communities, each with its own distinctive burial traditions. According to researchers, this diversity is helping them reconstruct how ancient Egyptian religious beliefs, daily life, and social structures evolved over hundreds of years. Mustafa Waziri emphasized that this is far more than an ordinary archaeological discovery. It is a scientific breakthrough that could rewrite the history of the Damietta region. Because every tomb, every fragment of gold, every protective amulet, and every carved statue serves as a message from the past, bringing us one step closer to understanding a civilization that once stood among the greatest the ancient world had ever seen. The joint tomb of two men and the 8 words, carved on its wall that revealed a heartbreaking story. If one day you came across a tomb containing the remains of 2 people buried together, what would be the very first thing that came to your mind? Most people would probably assume it was the tomb of a husband and wife. After all, for thousands of years, joint burials in Eastern cultures have almost always been associated with married couples. But an ancient tomb discovered in China completely shattered that assumption. Inside were not a husband and wife, nor a father and son, nor even blood relatives. Instead, the tomb held the remains of 2 men. Even more astonishing, an inscription that survived on the tomb wall revealed a story so moving that even seasoned archaeologists were left speechless. The story began in March 2014, when construction workers were building a new subway line in Chengdu, Sichuan Province, China. As heavy machinery dug deep into the ground, workers unexpectedly uncovered a series of brick and stone structures that looked remarkably like ancient tombs. Realizing they might have stumbled upon an important archaeological site, construction immediately came to a halt, and the authorities were notified. Archaeologists soon arrived and launched an emergency excavation. As they continued digging, they were astonished to discover that what lay beneath the surface wasn't just a handful of isolated graves. Instead, they uncovered an enormous cemetery complex covering approximately 24,750 square feet. Dozens of tombs built from large bricks and stone emerged from beneath the earth. Many of the stone slabs were beautifully carved with dragons and phoenixes using remarkably sophisticated craftsmanship. Even a quick glance made it obvious that the people buried here had not been ordinary citizens. Unfortunately, over the centuries, most of the tombs had already been looted. Grave robbers had stolen nearly all of the valuable burial treasures. Yet despite the missing artifacts, the surviving stone inscriptions revealed a truth that completely surprised researchers. The entire cemetery had served as the burial ground for Ming Dynasty eunuchs, the palace officials who served within the imperial court. Among the many tombs, archaeologists quickly focused their attention on tomb number 12 and tomb number 13 in Area B of the excavation. Together, they formed an extremely rare double-chambered joint burial. The team also discovered one tomb brick, whose color differed noticeably from all the others, suggesting that this particular tomb had been constructed with extraordinary care. Although part of the structure had collapsed and grave robbers had taken many of the burial goods, the overall layout remained remarkably well preserved. During the excavation, archaeologists recovered several valuable artifacts, including ceramic figurines whose vibrant colors had survived for more than 500 years. The exceptional craftsmanship clearly indicated that the tomb's occupants had once held positions of considerable importance. But one question puzzled everyone. Why would a cemetery reserved for eunuchs contain a joint burial for two men? Such a practice was almost unheard of in traditional Chinese burial customs. The answer was carved into the stone inscription itself. After carefully deciphering the text, experts determined that the two men buried there were named Wei Yu and Ruan Ying, both eunuchs who served during the Ming Dynasty. Historical records reveal that during the reign of the Chenghua Emperor, Wei Yu entered the residence of the Prince of Shu at the age of 8, while Ruan Ying arrived at just 6 years old. The two boys came from the same hometown and were nearly the same age, quickly becoming inseparable friends. Within the harsh and highly competitive environment of the imperial court, they relied on one another for support, enduring countless hardships side by side. As the years passed, their intelligence and loyalty earned them the trust of the Prince of Shu. Eventually, both rose to positions of significant authority and influence. Yet behind their wealth and prestige lay a sorrow neither man could ever escape. As eunuchs, they could never marry or have children. In the society of their time, being a eunuch was also considered a disgrace to one's family lineage. After death, they were often denied burial alongside their ancestors. The older they became, the more they had to confront the painful reality of growing old alone. After years of reflection, the two friends made an extraordinary promise. They vowed that they would live as friends and be buried together after death. In the 11th year of the Zhengde Emperor's reign, Ruan Ying died at the age of 55. Wei Yu personally arranged every detail of his friend's funeral and deliberately reserved the burial space beside him for himself. 11 years later, when Wei Yu passed away, he was buried exactly where he had planned, resting beside the friend who had stood by his side throughout his entire life. Perhaps the most moving discovery of all was found on the wall inside the burial chamber. 8 large Chinese characters remained clearly carved into the stone. Sharing one home, sharing one grave, brothers forever by each other's side. Those 8 simple words tell the story of a friendship that endured for more than half a century. The Mayan Cenote of Death reveals a terrifying sacrificial secret buried for thousands of years in Mexico. Do you believe that deep within the dense jungles of modern-day Mexico, there still exists a place once considered a gateway to the world of the gods? A place so beautiful that anyone who sees it would be amazed, yet at the same time hides terrifying secrets that send chills down the spine of scientists when they uncover the truth beneath its depths. What is even more astonishing is that all of these stories are connected to one of the greatest civilizations in human history, the ancient Maya civilization. If you don't believe it, let's travel back in time 4,000 years. At that time, the Maya began building their civilization in a region called Cuello in Central America. Over time, they developed into multiple branches, with the largest group migrating toward the area around today's Gulf of Mexico. There, they built magnificent cities and architectural wonders that still astonish the modern world. And when talking about the Maya, perhaps no place is more famous than the ancient city of Chichen Itza, located on Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula. Did you know that even the name Chichen Itza carries a special meaning? In the Mayan language, Chichen means mouth of the well, and Itza refers to the people of the Itza. In other words, Chichen Itza means the mouth of the well of the Itza people. This name did not appear by coincidence. The city was built in a relatively dry region where water was essential for survival. Because of this, natural sinkholes formed in limestone caves became the most valuable resource in the entire region. However, what made Chichen Itza truly famous was not only its massive pyramids or impressive structures. About 0.9 miles from the city center, there are two natural sinkholes, each about 200 feet in diameter. One was used for daily life and agriculture. The other had a completely different purpose. This was the sacred cenote, the site of bloody sacrificial rituals dedicated to the rain god. The ancient Maya believed that gods controlled every aspect of life. Among them, the rain god and the sun god were especially revered because they determined the survival of crops and harvests. According to surviving ancient records, whenever a drought occurred, the Maya believed the rain god was angry. To appease this divine wrath, they would select a virgin girl around 14 years old as a sacrifice. For the Maya at that time, this was not considered punishment, but rather a sacred honor. They believed that once the girl was lowered into the cenote, she would become a servant of the water god and live in a richer, more abundant world than anything on earth. Even during years of good weather, priests would still perform similar rituals to show gratitude to the gods. On the day of the ceremony, thousands of people from all over would gather at the temple next to the sacred cenote. The chosen girl would be dressed in the finest garments, blessed by shamans, and given a drink to help calm her nerves. At dawn, the procession would begin, traveling along a path about 1,300 feet long, leading to the sacred sinkhole. Amid the sound of drums and mystical prayers, the young girl would be lifted by guards and thrown into the deep waters below. Immediately afterward, the crowd would begin dancing and singing, while wealthy participants would throw gold, silver, jewels, and valuable offerings into the cenote to pray for peace and a prosperous harvest. Centuries passed, and the Mayan Empire gradually declined after Europeans arrived in the Americas around the 16th century. Human sacrifice rituals eventually came to an end. Today, in the village of Yasuna near Chichen Itza, locals still maintain traditional rain-calling ceremonies, but they have replaced human offerings with goats and chickens. Visitors can still witness reenactments of ancient rituals, complete with shamans, mystical music, and traditional costumes, like a journey back in time. Evidence of these terrifying sacrificial rituals was uncovered during archaeological excavations, where researchers found more than 100 human skeletons, along with countless gold, silver, jewelry, and ancient artifacts. These discoveries have helped scientists better understand the physical appearance, culture, beliefs, and development of the Maya civilization. Perhaps each skeleton resting at the bottom of that deep cenote is still telling the story of a once mighty civilization. One that, like all others in human history, could not escape the rise and fall of time. The ancient world is truly terrifying, isn't it? The 3,000-year-old skeleton that reveals one of ancient China's most brutal punishments. In the ancient fields of Shanxi province, China, once considered the cradle of the famed Zhou dynasty civilization, archaeologists discovered an ancient tomb containing a skeleton that immediately drew the attention of researchers. At first glance, it appeared to be just an ordinary burial site, lying quietly underground for nearly 3,000 years. But as scientists began to examine it more closely, they realized that this skeleton held a heartbreaking story about law, punishment, and human fate in ancient Chinese society. What shocked experts was not the burial goods or rare artifacts typically found in archaeological excavations. Instead, the secret was hidden within the bones of the deceased. The remains belonged to a woman between 30 and 35 years old, with one unusual and striking feature. Her right foot had been amputated while she was still alive. As you can imagine, thousands of years ago, long before modern painkillers or advanced surgical techniques, losing a part of the body was not only a physical tragedy, but a lifelong sentence of suffering. So what happened to this woman? Who was she? And why did she endure such a horrific punishment? In fact, the skeleton was first discovered during an archaeological excavation in 1999 near the city of Baoji in Shanxi province, China. However, at that time, most of the attention was focused on the artifacts, and the skeleton itself was not studied in detail. It was only many years later, as science and technology advanced, that researchers returned to examine it more closely. A study conducted by experts at Peking University produced astonishing results. Researcher Li Nun and his team used X-ray imaging and modern bioarchaeological analysis to determine the identity and condition of the woman. The results showed that she did not suffer from diseases such as leprosy, cancer, diabetes, or any severe trauma that would have required medical amputation. Even more, the structure of her tibia and fibula showed clear signs of intentional cutting, proving that her right foot had been deliberately removed. This allowed scientists to rule out any medical explanation. Instead, all evidence pointed to a far more chilling conclusion. This woman was a victim of the Yue punishment, one of the most brutal forms of punishment in ancient Chinese history. Did you know that in ancient China, there was once a system of 5 major punishments that lasted for nearly 1,000 years before being abolished around 200 BC? These punishments included facial tattooing, nose cutting, foot amputation, castration, and execution. Among them, the Yue punishment, amputation of one or both feet, was one of the most feared. According to historical records and bronze vessel engravings discovered in nearby tombs, those who committed minor crimes would have their left foot amputated, while serious offenders would lose their right foot. This suggests that the woman from Shanxi may have committed a very serious crime under the laws of that time. What is truly tragic is that many victims of this punishment did not survive due to blood loss or infection. Even those who lived were forced to endure extremely harsh lives afterward. They were often ostracized by society, looked down upon, and struggled to find any means of survival. Many were only able to take on the lowest-ranking jobs, such as guarding animal pens, a subtle form of humiliation in ancient society. However, this particular case revealed something remarkable. Analysis of the skeleton showed that the woman did not die immediately after the punishment. Instead, she survived for at least another 5 years. This suggests that she may have received care from her family or those around her, helping her endure the most difficult period after the tragedy. Today, this skeleton discovered in Shanxi is not just an archaeological artifact, it is the first fully studied scientific case of foot amputation punishment in ancient China. Thanks to this discovery, historians now have valuable insight into the legal system, social beliefs, and human lives that existed nearly 3 millennia ago. As you can see, the ancient world is full of mysteries and horrors. Even a single skeleton lying silently beneath the ground can tell an entire haunting chapter of history, one that time itself almost erased forever. The 10,000-year-old female figurine in Turkey, a mystery of humanity's earliest civilization. Hey my friend, have you ever wondered what life was like over 10,000 years ago when modern cities didn't even exist? What did people think about? What did they believe in? And how did they see themselves? To be honest, those questions are not easy to answer, right? But you know what? Sometimes the answers to questions that seem impossible to solve are buried deep beneath the ground, preserved for thousands of years, just waiting to be discovered. And this time, a remarkable discovery in Turkey has caught the attention of archaeologists around the world. At the Çatalhöyük archaeological site, located in the city of Konya, Turkey, researchers uncovered an extremely valuable artifact during excavations led by Professor Ian Hodder from Stanford University, USA. On September 13th, the Turkish Ministry of Culture and Tourism officially announced the discovery, and it immediately drew widespread interest from the academic community. The artifact is a nearly intact female figurine dating back to around 8,000 to 8,500 BC, meaning it is over 10,000 years old, from the Neolithic period. Of course, what makes this figurine so special is not only its incredible age. Experts describe it as depicting a woman with an unusually full figure, about 6.7 inches long and weighing nearly 2.2 pounds, crafted from marble. Even through a modern lens, the details of the figurine reveal the astonishing craftsmanship of people who lived tens of thousands of years before us. Archaeologists found the figurine buried beneath ancient soil layers alongside fragments of volcanic glass. Upon closer study, they noticed that the head, hairstyle, hands placed beneath the chest, and small feet all reflect highly distinctive features considered characteristic of the Çatalhöyük culture. However, what amazed experts most was the exceptional state of preservation and the remarkable precision of its carved details. Just imagine, over 10,000 years ago, Long before machines or any form of advanced technology existed, humans were still capable of creating an artwork with such precision and aesthetic sophistication. What does that tell us? Doesn't it suggest that this figurine is not just an ordinary archaeological artifact, but more like a time portal, allowing us to glimpse the life, beliefs, and culture of some of the earliest people on Earth? Even more fascinating is the fact that Çatalhöyük was not an ordinary settlement. It is considered one of the oldest and largest known human settlements ever discovered. The site has provided countless important clues about a major turning point in human history, the shift from small villages to larger, more complex communities, laying the foundation for the first cities in history. Who exactly was the woman depicted in this figurine? Was she a goddess worshipped by the people, a symbol of fertility and prosperity, or simply an artistic representation of daily life in Çatalhöyük? Unfortunately, even after more than 10,000 years, these mysteries still have no definitive answers. And that is exactly what makes this small figurine one of the most fascinating archaeological discoveries, helping us understand the earliest chapters in the long story of human civilization. Two mysterious tombs beneath a Mayan pyramid in Guatemala, revealing the legacy of the powerful Serpent dynasty. Deep within the vast tropical rainforests of northern Guatemala, a country in Central America, ancient ruins have remained silent for more than 1,000 years. Every tree root and every stone in this place seems to preserve stories that history has long forgotten. Beneath the thick layers of soil and tangled vines lie the remains of a civilization that once astonished the world with its advanced achievements in architecture, astronomy, and culture. This is the legendary Maya civilization. For centuries, the collapse of the Maya has remained one of the greatest mysteries in global archaeology. Vast cities were abandoned, grand palaces were slowly swallowed by the jungle, and the names of many powerful kings survived only in unreadable ancient inscriptions. But sometimes, history speaks again through discoveries buried deep underground. This time, in the ancient city of Holmol in northern Guatemala, archaeologists conducted an important excavation beneath two ancient pyramids. And in a place seemingly forgotten by time, they uncovered two ancient tombs belonging to the Maya civilization. From the very first traces, experts realized these were not ordinary burials. And indeed, as they went deeper, the team discovered several remarkable artifacts. Among them were a preserved tibia bone, jade-inlaid teeth, and most notably, a pendant depicting a serpent king. These findings immediately drew the attention of archaeologists as they may be linked to the highest ruling elite of ancient Maya society. According to archaeologist Francisco Estrada Belli, who directly participated in the research, the pendant likely belonged to Uknum T. Chan, a sacred ruler of the Kanol dynasty. This dynasty is considered one of the most powerful forces in the ancient Maya world. Its kings were known as the Serpent Kings, a symbol of supreme authority and widespread domination. Interestingly, Holmol was once a thriving settlement during the classic Maya period, which lasted from 250 to 900 AD. This was a time when Maya writing, art, and culture flourished across what is now Central America and southern Mexico. However, behind this prosperity were constant wars between city-states struggling for power and influence. It was through these conflicts that the Maya Empire under the leadership of the Kanol Serpent Kings gradually emerged. They once ruled vast territories and held supreme status in the Maya world. But strangely, just a few generations later, this once powerful dynasty almost completely disappeared from history. Time erased their traces so thoroughly that centuries later, no one clearly knew who they were or how they had once existed. Thanks to excavations at Holmol and other archaeological sites, scientists are slowly piecing together these lost fragments of history. Each artifact discovered, each tomb uncovered, is like turning a page of an ancient book that had been buried for thousands of years. The Maya civilization is widely regarded as one of the most brilliant civilizations of the ancient Americas. The Maya people lived on the Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico for around 2,000 years and established numerous advanced city-states. However, most of these kingdoms declined between the 9th and 10th centuries AD due to various factors. Only a few regions survived until the Spanish conquest in the 16th century. That conquest destroyed countless structures, documents, and priceless cultural heritage of the Maya people. Therefore, The discovery of two ancient tombs beneath the pyramids of Homol is not just an archaeological achievement, it is also a rare opportunity for humanity to better understand the rise, development, and collapse of a once dominant empire in Central America. So what do you think? Deep in the forests of Guatemala, are there still many hidden secrets of the Maya serpent kings waiting to be uncovered in the future? Or do you have a different perspective on this discovery? If so, feel free to let me know in the comments below this video. The 4,500-year-old diary that reveals how the Great Pyramid of Giza was built, a truth far different from what we once believed. For thousands of years, the Great Pyramid of Giza in Egypt has been regarded as one of the most mysterious structures ever built by humans. Every time people look up at that massive monument standing in the desert, countless questions arise. How were the ancient Egyptians able to transport multi-ton stone blocks without modern machinery? Who were the people who actually built this monumental structure? And what was their daily life like during those years of intense labor? For centuries, these questions remained largely unanswered. But in 2013, a remarkable archaeological discovery in the Wadi al-Jarf area along Egypt's Red Sea coast shocked researchers around the world. Inside ancient limestone caves that had been sealed for more than 4,500 years, archaeologists discovered around 30 of the oldest known papyrus scrolls ever found. What is truly astonishing is that these documents not only recorded the operations of an ancient harbor, but also contained diary entries written by a man named Mirror, who personally participated in the construction of the Great Pyramid of Giza. Few people know that Wadi al-Jarf was once a highly active economic and maritime hub during the reign of Pharaoh Khufu, the king who ordered the construction of the Great Pyramid. The site was first discovered in 1823 by British researcher John Gardner Wilkinson. However, it was not until 2008 when French Egyptologist Pierre Tallet led large-scale excavations that its true significance began to emerge. Through research, archaeologists confirmed that Wadi al-Jarf was an important seaport dating back approximately 4,500 years. From this location, material transportation for the construction of the Great Pyramid was organized in a highly systematic way. The archaeological site stretches for several miles between the Nile River and the Red Sea and includes storage facilities, living quarters, docks, and, most notably, around 30 large limestone caves used to store goods and boats. It was in one of these caves that the precious papyrus scrolls were discovered on March 24, 2013. What is astonishing is that after more than 4 millennia buried in the harsh desert, these writings still contained enough information to reconstruct the daily lives of the people who built one of the greatest wonders of the ancient world. At the center of these records is Mirror, a foreman in charge of about 200 workers. In his diary, Mirror carefully documented the tasks his team carried out over a period of roughly 3 months during the pyramid's construction. These records show that ancient Egyptian workers transported white limestone blocks from the Tura quarry to the Giza construction site by boat along the Nile River. Every shipment was carefully recorded, monitored, and accounted for. One entry even describes in detail a 3-day journey from the quarry to the base of the pyramid before the workers returned for the next shipment. The diary also unintentionally reveals the identity of one of the most important supervisors of the project. This was Onkaf, the half-brother of Pharaoh Khufu, who held the title Overseer of all the king's works. This is one of the rare direct pieces of evidence about the administrative system behind this monumental construction. But perhaps the most fascinating detail for historians lies elsewhere. For a long time, many believed that the Great Pyramid was built by large numbers of enslaved people. However, Mirror's records tell a very different story. He carefully documented the workers' living conditions, including their food rations and compensation. At that time, the Egyptians did not use currency, so labor was paid in grain. The amount received depended on each worker's role and responsibility. Their daily meals were also far more diverse than many would expect. The diary mentions leavened bread, flatbread, meat, dates, honey, beans, and even beer. These details suggest that the workers who built the Great Pyramid were not enslaved laborers, but rather skilled workers who were organized, managed, and fairly compensated. After more than 4,500 years buried inside the limestone caves of Wadi al-Jarf, Merer's writings have become a gateway that takes us back to the age of Pharaoh Khufu. Thanks to this discovery, one of the greatest mysteries of the ancient world has finally begun to be unraveled, helping us better understand the people who helped create a wonder that still amazes humanity to this day. And isn't this discovery truly fascinating and incredible, my friends? The 70-million-year-old dinosaur embryo preserved inside an egg. Did you know that the world of archaeology and paleontology is truly fascinating? Some fossils allow us to understand what long-extinct creatures once looked like. Others even enable scientists to reconstruct entire ancient ecosystems. But sometimes an extraordinary discovery appears that brings us closer than ever to the very moment life was about to begin, tens of millions of years ago. A perfect example of this is a dinosaur egg discovered in Jiangxi Province, eastern China, which still preserved an almost intact embryo that had remained undisturbed for over 70 million years. When researchers first examined this specimen, they could hardly believe what they were seeing. Inside the fossilized eggshell was the skeleton of a baby dinosaur, still clearly preserved in a tightly curled posture. This rare discovery quickly drew the attention of paleontologists around the world, as it looked almost like a snapshot captured right at the moment an ancient creature was about to be born. Because of this, scientists named the specimen Baby Yingliang. It was discovered in rock layers dating back to the late Cretaceous period in Jiangxi Province, China, approximately 72 to 66 million years ago. At a time when humans did not yet exist and dinosaurs still dominated the continents, this tiny creature lay inside its egg, waiting to hatch. However, some catastrophic event must have occurred that prevented this process from ever being completed. Ironically, this is what allowed one of the most valuable fossils ever discovered to be preserved. According to research conducted by the Yingliang Stone Nature History Museum, China University of Geosciences, and scholars from Taiwan and Canada, the dinosaur egg is oval-shaped, measuring about 3.5 inches in diameter and 6.7 inches in length. Inside was an embryo preserved in an exceptionally complete state. Scientists estimate that if the animal had successfully hatched, it would have measured about 10.6 inches from head to tail. If it had continued to grow into adulthood, it could have reached a length of 6.5 to 9.8 feet. What particularly fascinated experts was the structure of the skull, spine, and limb bones of the embryo. After detailed analysis, they concluded that it most likely belonged to a group of duck-billed dinosaurs known as hadrosaurids. This group was among the most common herbivorous dinosaurs during the late age of dinosaurs and lived across many regions of the planet. However, the greatest value of baby Yingliang is not only its classification. What truly excited scientists was the embryo's unusual posture inside the egg. By comparing it with other dinosaur embryos and observing the behavior of modern birds, researchers found a striking similarity. They discovered that just before hatching, the dinosaur embryo performed body positioning movements very similar to those seen in modern birds today. In other words, this tiny creature was curling its body and preparing to break out of its egg in a way remarkably similar to its modern descendants, birds. This discovery provides important evidence of the deep evolutionary connection between birds and dinosaurs. Although fossilized dinosaur eggs have been found around the world since 1859, most of them no longer contain preserved embryos. In China, which is known for a large number of late Cretaceous egg fossils, cases with fully preserved embryos are extremely rare. Because of this, baby Yingliang is considered one of the most valuable fossils ever discovered. You know, every fossil tells a story about the past, but baby Yingliang is something even more special than that. It not only helps scientists better understand how dinosaurs reproduced and developed, but also gives us a rare glimpse of a moment frozen for tens of millions of years, a creature that never got the chance to enter the world, yet became a key to unlocking some of the deepest secrets of the age of dinosaurs. Truly remarkable, isn't it? The reclining terracotta figure with hands pressed to the ground in the tomb of Qin Shi Huang. When people think of the tomb of Qin Shi Huang in Shanxi Province, China, they often immediately imagine the magnificent terracotta army, with thousands of soldiers standing in orderly formation as if ready to march into real battle. However, within this world-famous archaeological complex lies a very unusual figure. so unusual that archaeologists have spent more than 2 decades studying and restoring it. What makes it especially remarkable is that its secret is not hidden in its outward appearance, but rather revealed through a tiny fingerprint preserved for more than 2,000 years. The story begins in March 1974, when local farmers accidentally discovered the famous terracotta army within the burial complex of Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor to unify China. This discovery quickly became one of the most shocking archaeological finds of the 20th century. Since then, archaeologists have uncovered more than 8,000 terracotta figures, along with countless chariots, weapons, and other valuable artifacts buried deep underground. What astonished researchers is that although all of these figures were made from clay and fired at relatively low temperatures, no two statues are exactly alike. From facial features and body shape to hairstyles and original coloring, each one carries unique characteristics, creating the impression of a real army guarding the eternal rest of a powerful emperor. However, among these thousands of terracotta figures, experts discovered one that was completely different from the rest. Instead of standing upright like the typical soldiers, this figure is lying on its back on the ground, with its knees bent, feet spread outward, and both hands pressed against the ground behind it. This unusual posture puzzled archaeologists, as no terracotta figure had ever been found in such a position before. The statue was excavated from a burial pit of about 7,500 square feet, located in the southeastern area of Qin Shi Huang's mausoleum. After many years of research and restoration, on June 11, 2022, coinciding with Cultural and Natural Heritage Day, the museum in Xi'an, Shanxi Province, officially displayed this unique artifact to the public. After more than 2 millennia underground, the figure, about 5 feet long and weighing over 225 pounds, still raises questions that scientists cannot immediately answer. Because it is the only known terracotta figure in a reclining posture, its restoration process received special attention from experts. And then, an unexpected discovery occurred. While examining the figure's abdomen, an archaeologist noticed a fingerprint clearly visible on the terracotta surface. At first, he thought it might have been his own fingerprint left accidentally during the research process. But after careful comparison, experts confirmed that it was actually the fingerprint of the craftsman who created the statue more than 2,000 years ago. This small discovery immediately opened a completely new line of research. Although the exact identity of the artisan cannot be determined, experts believe, based on the fingerprint's characteristics, that the maker of the figure may have been a teenager. By comparing this with historical records from the Qin dynasty, researchers found that due to the enormous labor demand during the construction of Qin Shi Huang's massive mausoleum, many teenagers were recruited to help produce terracotta figures. That fingerprint is like a message from the past, helping researchers better understand the ordinary people who contributed to one of the greatest archaeological monuments in human history. In addition, experts also found traces of lacquer on the figure's arms, providing further insight into the techniques and finishing processes used in Qin dynasty terracotta production. After years of study, the museum in Xi'an proposed an interesting hypothesis. They suggest that this may not be a warrior figure at all, but rather an acrobat or court entertainer. This theory gains further support from more recent discoveries of additional performing artist figures, as well as about 15 musician statues found in the same excavation area. This suggests that the afterlife world prepared by Qin Shi Huang was not only filled with soldiers, horses, and weapons. The famous emperor also appears to have wanted to bring along the entertainment and pleasures he enjoyed in life. And this unusual reclining figure has become one of the most important clues, helping us better understand the life, culture, and hidden secrets within this massive burial complex that has existed for over 2,000 years. The 2,000-year-old mystery coin that may preserve the true face of Jesus Christ. For nearly 2,000 years, billions of people around the world have been familiar with images of Jesus Christ depicted in paintings, sculptures, and famous religious artworks. However, surprisingly, no one actually knows what Jesus truly looked like. The Bible does not describe his physical appearance in detail, and the familiar images we see today only began to appear centuries after his death. Because of this, any clue related to the real appearance of this famous historical figure can immediately spark major debate among researchers. And then, a small bronze coin dating back to the 1st century unexpectedly became the center of a long-standing controversy lasting many years. What makes it especially intriguing is that some researchers believe this coin may preserve the only authentic depiction of Jesus Christ that has survived to the present day. The story begins with an ancient coin discovered in the region once belonging to the ancient kingdom of Edessa, located in what is now southeastern Turkey. For many years, scholars believed that the bearded face engraved on the coin represented King Manu, a ruler who governed the kingdom during the 1st century AD. Everything seemed settled, until British historian Ralph Ellis began a nearly 30-year-long investigation. Imagine this. What if one of the most famous figures in human history was actually a king from antiquity that we had never considered before? That is the bold hypothesis Ellis proposed after decades of studying historical documents, legends, and surviving ancient records. According to Ralph Ellis, King Manu and Jesus Christ may actually have been the same person. To test this theory, he compared extensive historical data, analyzed stories passed down through generations, and examined details related to the lives of both figures. His findings led him to believe that there are too many similarities between them for it to be mere coincidence. If this claim is correct, then the controversial ancient coin would carry extraordinary significance. It could represent the only known portrait of Jesus created during his lifetime or very close to his era. This would make it one of the most important discoveries in both Christian history and human history as a whole. One detail that particularly caught Ellis's attention was the crown depicted on the figure's head on the coin. According to him, the crowns worn by the kings of Edessa were made from thorn-like branches. This led him to associate it with the well-known Christian narrative in which Jesus was forced to wear a crown of thorns before his crucifixion. Ellis argues that the shared symbolism of the crown of thorns between the two figures may not be coincidental. He considers this one of the key clues linking King Manu and Jesus Christ, and it became a central argument in his controversial research. However, not everyone agrees with his hypothesis. Since Ralph Ellis published his book presenting this theory in the United States in 2012, he has faced strong criticism from many historians and scholars. Critics argue that the theory contains several inconsistencies, particularly regarding chronology and historical timelines between the life of Jesus and the reign of King Manu. Nevertheless, Ellis has stood by his interpretation. He argues that any theory that challenges a traditional narrative passed down for more than 1,500 years will naturally face skepticism and resistance. From his perspective, however, there is still enough historical evidence to justify further investigation into the possible connection between the two figures. To this day, the mystery of Jesus Christ's true face remains unsolved. The ancient coin from Edessa in modern-day Turkey continues to spark debate among scholars. But whether Ralph Ellis's theory is correct or not, this discovery serves as a reminder that history is full of unexpected mysteries. Sometimes, even a small coin that has remained untouched for nearly 2,000 years can reignite a major debate about one of the most famous figures in human history. The Ghost Village. Beneath a lake in Italy, the mystery of an ancient town that appears only a few times a century. There are cities swallowed by deserts. There are civilizations buried beneath the ocean for thousands of years. But in the beautiful Tuscany region of Italy, there exists a strange village that only appears once every few decades, before disappearing again as if it had never existed. What makes it even more extraordinary is that this village is not a legend or folklore. It still exists today, lying silently beneath the waters of a massive lake. In the Garfagnana area of the province of Lucca, in Tuscany, Italy, there is an ancient village called Fabrish di Caragine. At first glance, it looks like hundreds of other historic villages across Italy. But its fate is completely different. For more than 70 years, it has spent most of its time submerged underwater, only reappearing on extremely rare occasions. Few people know that Fabrish di Caragine dates back to the 13th century. For generations, people lived peacefully here among the green mountains of northern Italy. Stone houses, churches, cemeteries, stone bridges, and narrow roads witnessed centuries of local life. But everything changed in 1947 when a dam construction project on the Idron River was launched to generate hydroelectric power and provide water storage in case of fires or drought. After the dam was completed, an artificial reservoir called Lago di Vogli was created. Imagine for a moment that your hometown was about to be completely submerged underwater. How would you feel? That was exactly what the people of Fabrish di Caragine faced at the time. All residents were forced to leave the village their families had lived in for generations and relocate to a new town called Vagli di Soto, located near the lake. As the water began to rise, streets, houses, and historic buildings slowly disappeared beneath the surface. From that moment on, Fabrice di Caragine became a true ghost town. Under approximately 9 billion gallons of water in Lago di Vagli, an entire centuries-old community was swallowed in silence. What made this place famous worldwide is an extremely rare phenomenon. Since the reservoir was created, the lake has only been fully drained 4 times for dam maintenance in 1958, 1974, 1983, and 1994. Each time this happened, an astonishing scene emerged. As the water level slowly dropped, the remains of the ancient village began to rise from the lakebed like a forgotten city of time. Stone walls, old streets, bridges, cemeteries, churches, and even a bell tower gradually reappeared before visitors' eyes, as if they had stepped through a time portal. The most recent time Fabrice di Caragine resurfaced was in 1994. The event attracted thousands of visitors from all over Tuscany. Many people spent hours walking through streets that had been submerged for decades. Photographs taken at the time showed that most structures were remarkably well preserved despite being underwater for such a long time. After 1994, the village once again disappeared beneath the water and returned to its silence. There were plans to drain the lake again in 2016, which created great anticipation among the public. However, the plan was ultimately cancelled, postponing the chance to witness the ghost village once more. Even so, hope has not completely faded. The energy company Enel, which owns the dam at Lago di Vagli, has stated that it may still consider draining the lake in the future. The goal would not only be maintenance, but also to boost tourism in the region. After all, it is difficult for anyone to resist the appeal of a 13th century village that appears only a few times over more than a century, before disappearing once again into the deep water. And who knows, someday soon, Fabrice di Caragine may rise from the lake once more, continuing its unfinished story for the modern world to witness. Because after all, the ancient world is full of mysteries we have yet to uncover. As you can see, even though science and technology have advanced tremendously in modern times, there are still many mysteries from the past that humanity has not yet been able to fully solve. From ancient tombs buried for thousands of years, to strange fossils and artifacts that continue to spark endless debate among scientists, everything shows that history still holds countless discoveries waiting to be uncovered. So in your opinion, which archaeological discovery on today's list is the most astonishing? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoy mysterious stories about history and archaeology, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss the next exciting journey of discovery. For now, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.